Council, please come to order. I've asked for Councilman Casey to be act as pro tem. Several of our members are at other events and they should be coming in shortly, but we have two pieces of legislation we want to get out of the way first before we call upon the federal monitor. So Madam Clerk, call the roll. Present. Thank you. And Councilman Starnick, he's groundbreaking, and he'll be here shortly. Okay. Ordinance number 553-2026. Is anybody here from the administration? Anyone here from the administration? 555-2026. Anyone here from the administration? Okay, well, somebody better grab them quick. So, okay. We'll knock these two pieces out as soon as you get over here. Okay, thank you. Okay, Director's on his way over. Thank you, Director. And I know you have a lot of stuff going on today as well. That's all right. We're flexible. Ordinance number 553-2026 by Councilmembers Polensek and Griffin by department request an emergency ordinance authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of replacement firefighter high-rise kits for the Division of Fire, Department of Public Safety for a term of 1 year with two one-year options to renew, exercisable by Director of Public Safety. Came to us for the first time, first reading, April 27th. 2026 has been approved by Director of Public Safety, approved by Director of Finance. There is no legal objection to the legislation as drawn up. And I'm looking for a dollar amount in here, but I don't happen to see.
Through the chair, it's $170,750.
Okay. Let's see where that's in here. Okay. So, Assistant Law Director, I want to make sure the dollar amount is in the legislation, because it is not in here. Okay, proceed. Tell us what this is about.
Through the chair, as you stated, it's ordinance number 553-2025, and it does authorize, this legislation will authorize the Division of Fire to purchase high-rise kits. The Division of Fire will be transitioning to a new system for these high-rise kits, which will replace the division currently outdated kits. This equipment is critical to the operations of the Division of Fire. The purchase of this equipment is for an amount not to exceed $170,750 and will be funded through the Capital Project Fund.
So say that again, 170,000.
Yes, sir. $750.
$750.
Not to exceed that amount.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's through the Capital Project Fund.
Okay,
Again, this is equipment, as stated, that's outdated. We want to make sure that our fire division members have the appropriate equipment when they're conducting their
questions
jobs.
of the committee to the director. Yes, Councilman Slade.
I would like to, for this and the next piece, both propose the amendments that we would receive written notice to the clerk whenever purchases are made through cooperative processes. I can make that amendment now, or I
Make
can.
that amendment.
So I move to amend section 3 by adding at the end, the Director of Public Safety shall provide written notice to the Clerk of Council whenever any purchase is made through the cooperative process, which notice shall include the details of such cooperative purchases.
Is there a second to that? Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll on the motion. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The amendment is approved. Any other questions on the piece of legislation? Without objection, ordinance number 553-2026 as amended is approved. Please sign it up. We have one more piece, and we'll get into the Federal Monitor. Ordinance number 555-2026 by council members Polensek and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services for fiscal year 2025 Ohio Drug Enforcement Fund Grant for the operation of the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force, formerly known as the Northern Ohio Law Enforcement Task Force, and authorizing the director to enter into agreements with the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office and other entities to implement the grant. It was read for the first time on April 27th. It's approved by the Director of Public Safety, approved by the Director of Finance. There's no legal objection. And according to the legislation in the administrative report, it's a sum of $83,189.33. Director.
Yes, to the chair and council members, the purpose of the grant, the goal of the fiscal year 25 Ohio Drug Law Enforcement Fund grant is to defray the expenses that a drug task force organization incurs while performing its functions related to the enforcement of the state drug laws and other state laws related to illegal drug activity. The city will receive reimbursement for police officer overtime, equipment and supplies, case-related travel, and other costs while conducting the signal investigations. The grant term, the anticipated grant award amount is $249,567.92 for a period of July 1st of this year through June 10th of next year, 2027. This grant has a cash match requirement of $83,189.33 for a total of $32,757.25, and the expenses will be reimbursed following. Is personnel, that's $79,811.15. Consultants, that's partner agencies overtime, $78,314.10. Case-related travel, $10,082. Equipment, $56,000. Supplies, $1,000. Other costs is $8,550, and confidential funds, $99,000 for that total I mentioned before. The grant period, again, is what I mentioned before. We've received this grant annually since 2009, and there is a local match, which is the $83,000 that I mentioned. And we're here for any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. How many officers, CPD officers, are assigned to this task force?
To the chair, my name is Sergeant McNeely. I work for Cleveland Division of Police, and I'm the supervisor of the Signal Task Force. There's 4 detectives assigned full-time and myself.
Okay. And where do they operate out of?
The Strike Force building?
Okay. And where's that located at?
To the chair, it's in the Old Brooklyn area.
Okay. And then the total number of officers from the other agencies, how many of those?
Total officers, investigators, and analysts, there's over 30-some personnel assigned.
Okay. And they operate throughout the county?
Throughout the county, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, well, actually, to the chair, they operate throughout the Northern District of Ohio, but primary Cleveland and the greater Cleveland area
Okay.
is the focus.
Dawn, do you have anything to add?
Through the chair, yes, this is a competitive
Pull
grant.
the mic closer.
Sorry. This is a competitive grant that we've received for many years, and really, I think the reason why we're so successful is because Sergeant McNeely and his team at the task force, they're really the gold standard when it comes to managing grants. They do a fantastic job of record keeping and ensuring that all the money is spent the way it should be spent. So really, kudos to him and his team.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could jump in as
Yeah.
well, yeah, that Sergeant McNeil and his team, not only that, they manage the grant exceptionally well, but just the work that they do on a day-to-day basis, you know, holding folks accountable for selling illicit drugs and the other things that's associated with it. So really proud of the effort of McNeil, his staff, and the other agencies that work with them.
Okay. Before I open up for questions of my colleagues, the statistics, do you have any statistics as it pertains to confiscation, drugs, guns, arrests?
To the chair, we do. I have the calendar, the 25 calendar year stats. I can read them off.
Okay, read them quickly to us. Thank
Search
you.
warrants, 98. Indictments, arrest, 50. Cocaine seized, 179.88 kilos. Fentanyl pills seized, 746 unit doses. Fentanyl powder seized, 3.36 kilos. Methamphetamine seized, 395.31 kilos. Marijuana seized, 6,684.28 kilos. Drug trafficking proceeds, $1.1 million. And then firearms, 21.
So the cash, the money that is seized, is that split among the various agencies?
To the chair, it is split, yes.
Okay. So what was Cleveland's take out of that, do you know?
To the chair, I don't have those exact numbers, but I can get them for you.
Now, does that go into, where do those funds go?
To the chair, the Law Enforcement Trust
Yes.
Fund is used for a number of purposes, including training and also the cash match.
So it would be
for this
under
grant.
control of the safety director, those funds?
Through the chair, yes, through the chair,
okay.
through the Department of Public Safety and Division of Police, but it goes to the law enforcement.
Okay. So the 83,000 was in the budget, was in the general fund budget for the Division of Police?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. Questions of the committee? Questions? Councilman Slight.
Similarly, I would like to move to amend the ordinance by inserting at the end of Section 5, the Director of Public Safety shall provide written notice to the Clerk of Council whenever any purchase is made through the cooperative process, which notice shall include the details of such cooperative purchases.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that? Okay. Question on the motion? Okay. Call the roll on the motion? On the amendment, excuse me. Yes. Thank you. The amendment is approved as read. Questions on the legislation itself? Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, who is the lead agency on this? Is it CPD?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, it's a CPD and FBI task force, so it's co-commanded by myself and an FBI supervisor.
Are there any, who are the other partners on it?
There's numerous partners at the local level, North Royalton Police Department, Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department, Regional Transit Authority. There's an element of DEA. HIDA is a component of it. There's, I'm trying to think of some other agencies. Oh, so we have IRS agents assigned. Border Patrol agents are assigned. Literally every federal entity and most local, at local level, PDs, they're also assigned as well. So we have a large component of members in the greater Cleveland area assigned.
Thank you. But Cleveland, through the chair, Cleveland Police are our leading partner along with the FBI.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, it's the Cleveland Police Cleveland Police and FBI are the largest component of the task force.
Okay. And through the chair, I see in the breakdown of the expenses that there are also consultants and partner agency overtime. Are the consultants the other agencies involved, or are those something else?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what they are for the local task force officers. That's an overtime component for them to use.
Okay, thank you. And do you know what the breakdown is on what the FBI's contribution is, as far as their share of the budget for this program?
To the chair, it's significant. It's just it comes from a different entity and it's distributed in a different way. It could be vehicles. They also have an overtime and all the basically every equipment that's utilized within the task force. A lot of it comes from the FBI.
Including personnel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I yield.
Thank you. I don't have my metric conversion here. What is a kilo versus a pound?
A kilo is 2.2 pounds.
Two? So you confiscated a bunch,
A bunch, yes.
a bunch.
Yes.
I'm sitting, I was trying to figure out how much that came out to. So, okay, any other questions? Without objection, ordinance number 555-2026 is approved as amended, and please get us the datum that you read off.
I thought, here it is.
Oh,
I
here,
just gave
okay,
it to you.
okay, good. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, thank you. Want to make sure.
you want-
So marijuana sees 6,684.28 grams. That's a lot of pot you guys got.
To the chair, it's a significant amount.
Significant amount. And where are you before you leave the table, where are you storing all this stuff?
To the chair, we do not send the bulk of marijuana to the Cleveland Police Department, so
Good.
it's not coming here.
Okay. Yeah, because boy, we need a lot of square footage for that one, okay? Okay, thank you very much for your information.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Director, if you want to be in attendance or you want to have your crew here, we're going to have the federal monitor at the table.
I'll sit in the back.
Okay, thank you. Federal monitor, come on to the table. Miss Christine Cole, glad to see you. Okay. Hello, Judge. Nice seeing you. So, to my honorable colleagues, to the viewing public, as some of you are aware, on May 6th, 2026, we had the police accountability team come before us. Dr. Anderson gave us an in-depth presentation as to where she and her team have believed we have made, and we say we, the Cleveland Division of Police have made progress, where there's still some areas of underperforming, but it was a good presentation, and I don't know if the Federal Monitor had an opportunity to see that presentation, but I'm going to give you one right here so you have it, because obviously the council, we want transparency, we want accountability, and we obviously want professional conduct within the Division of Police. And all of us want to move in a direction so at some point we can graciously and respectfully part company. Agreed, okay. Because at this point, we have spent, and I say we again, the City of Cleveland, General Fund has spent in excess of $50 million on police oversight. This year, we will spend in excess of $10 million on police oversight. So there are a lot of things in the City of Cleveland that we could be funding with those significant dollars, but yet we realize and we understand that we are under federal court order, and as a result, the Federal Monitor is here and has been here for 15 years, correct? No, 10 years, excuse me.
About 10 and a half at this point.
10 and a half. And the recent decision by Judge Oliver is that you're going to be around for a while yet. We don't know how long, but you're going to be here. And I expected the judge to make that ruling because, again, there's still some areas that need to be addressed, even in Dr. Anderson's presentation. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to ask for you to get going on your presentation. And again, we're glad to have you at the table, and you want to introduce your other compatriots here that are with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It is good to be back here. And once again, listen to your opening remarks reminds me how closely shared our goals are. Expeditious achievement of compliance is in everybody's interest, including ours. We enter this work because we care deeply about the profession and about the community, and as quickly as we can help the city find that sweet spot, we're ready to go home and either go back to retirement or get another job. So thank you. I am Christine Cole. I am the monitor of the police monitoring team. And also with me are Melody Stewart, deputy monitor, and Mr. Charles C. Both Melody Stewart and Charles C. are longtime residents of the city of Cleveland. And if you fear that I ever lose my focus on compliance, I can assure you that as members of the community and along with Dr. Ronnie Dunn, who wishes he could be here today, expeditious compliance is clearly a goal. So thank you once again for having us be here. We're here at your invitation to talk both about the 18th semi-annual report and our billing. And I'm pleased that you talked about some of the costs early on in your remarks, and I hope we can get to that at the end of our conversation today. We have the 18th semi-annual report was filed, as you said, in March of 2026, and that's in accordance with paragraph 375 of the consent decree that requires the monitor to file a report every 6 months, and it offers some guidelines on how that report should be set forth. We followed those guidelines, and we're going to give you a highlight of each of the sections of the consent decree as we run through this. I will spend as much time, or we will spend as much time on each section of the report as you desire.
Okay.
Our goal is to go through that relatively quickly because we believe that the real value comes in us being available to you to ask us questions about the work. So tell us if we're going too quickly. We want to make sure we give everything appropriate time.
Thank you.
Here's our agenda for the day. We've already started with our introductions. We'll go through the report overview. We'll tell you about what we're looking forward to. We'll talk about the billings and entertain questions. Before I jump to the first slide, which is the first section of the report, I didn't put this in writing, forgive me, is just remind us about the compliance levels. So, and how we do that. So, in the semi-annual report, you will see that every paragraph is rated on a roughly 6-point scale. There are a few paragraphs that we call not assessed. The reason we say they're not assessed is they tend to be overarching goal statements, and rather than having specific requirements, we view them as a summation of the section. So those are the things that fall into not assessed. We have partial compliance, which is an indication that the city is making efforts. They have done more than ignored it. They may have started with policies, they may have implemented policies but not completed training, or they're in the stage of getting ready for the implementation. The next level is operational compliance. Operational compliance tells us that it's working. They're doing it in practice, but we haven't had either enough time, meaning it's relatively new, or we haven't done a formal assessment to assess its actual weaving and commitment into operations. General compliance does just that. General compliance says, oh, we feel like this is happening. It's part of your practice. It's routine, it's regular, and we see it across a fair number of cases and across a period of time. And then the ultimate goal is substantial and effective. Substantial and effective compliance is usually something that we have seen over a long duration, 1 to 2 years, and the consent decree requires that there be a sustainment period where that substantial and effective compliance is demonstrated by the city. So those are the categories of assessment, and you'll see we have corresponding colors with them. Mr. C is going to talk first about the community engagement and building trust section. This is again, one section of the consent decree, and Charles, I turn it over to you.
And good morning once again. It is.
Charles, pull that mic right up in front of you, okay, so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Better?
Yes.
Great, thank you. See, it's always a privilege. I consider it a privilege to appear before this body. And I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for the work that you do on behalf of the citizens of Cleveland that improve the quality of life. We appreciate that and your work. Community engagement and building trust, as you know, are cornerstones of the consent decree. It's the intersection of, occurred at the intersection of police outreach and citizen participation. Two pillars identified by the consent decree for community engagement are the Community Police Commission, which we refer to as CPC, and the District Policing Committee, which we refer to as DPCs. The CPC, after a rather long period of not having a permanent executive director, being unable to effectively conduct the commission's mandates, finally in January 2026, after an exhaustive process of commission, hired an executive director, Ms. Shalina Williams, who took the reins, hit the ground running, and began working with co-chairs and other commissioners to establish viability of the agency and enhance community trust. The reporting period currently under discussion today covers the monitoring team's 18th semi-annual report. During that period, the commission had several board member vacancies within the ranks for the process, had several board members vacancies within the ranks, and the process of timely filling those vacancies was slow moving. There were also significant staff shortages. Only one full-time staff person and the dedicated co-chairs remained to operate the office. I'm happy to report today, however, that under the leadership of the newly appointed executive director, Ms. Williams, her commissioners' staffing levels are rapidly approaching sufficiently, and adequate funding of a few more key positions can bring the commission into compliance. Receiving documents requests of the city by the commission remain challenging. Within the city was responsible for fulfilling requests was not exactly clear. What documents could the city release and what redactions were necessary for the documents was at times a question. And tracking documents for timely responses was at times problematic. Both the city and CPC, designed to improve the document requests and fulfill process, are working with an outside agency to identify problems, develop solutions, and streamline the process. It is anticipated that a smooth, timely record request fulfillment process will result from the work with the outside group. District policing committees established effective working relationships with partners. DPCs have a number of partner entities within the city and community that must partner with the commission. Community Relations Board, Cleveland Division of Police, and Community Police Commission, and the other community groups. During this reporting period, those relationships require significant development. Lacking diversity of meeting participants. There are 5 districts across the city. Each of these districts have diverse communities within them. They each have varying age groups, ethnic backgrounds, cultural practices, and varying relationships with the law enforcement community. The consent decree requires contact with DPCs with diverse members of their districts. At the reporting of the last semi-annual report, they were lacking in that requirement to reach the diverse communities. The monitoring team is currently assembling a work group to address DPCs and to bring them into compliance with the consent decree. We look forward to our work with the DPCs and with the commission. Thank you.
I think what really a highlight of the goal of this section in the consent decree is establishing that community partners are centered in this process, that that the work is led by, driven by, and that the community partners are consulted for every piece of it. And that's an area where in any place there's some tension. And yet, it's primarily important to recognize that the city agencies, the Division of Police, the Community Relations Board, even the police members of the DPCs should be existing as support for the CPC and the DPC to actualize their potential and not the reverse. I regret not saying in my introduction that thank you for supplying us with the written version of the presentation that the PAT did. A number of us have had the opportunity to watch it. They spoke very, very well about all the assessments that we had done and pulled out language from our assessments demonstrating many of their successes. If I gloss over some of the successes, it's because we know you heard them 2 weeks ago, and I'd rather focus on what you got less of from them. Understandably, that's not critical of some of the places where we see there are gaps.
Okay. My question, so the report that you just released, that was the 18th report?
Correct.
Okay. To Mr. C's presentation, can we get a copy of that?
Yes.
At your convenience?
Certainly.
Do you look at, does the federal monitor, do you look at the operation of the CPC at all? I mean, do you look at how they function?
We do, and that's been an area of very intense work, actually.
Okay.
And really, the lack of having an executive director, a permanent executive director for much of last year, 2025, really caused some inability to continue their work in establishing strong foundations to set the stage for their future work and their efficient operations.
Right.
For example, by charter, the executive director is the only person that can hire staff. So in the absence of a permanent executive director, all those vacancies remained as such.
Right.
They are certainly looking forward to doing evidentiary hearings as necessary. It would be imprudent for them to do evidentiary hearings before such time as they have competent manuals to guide that, training to make sure that all their commissioners are well supported. As we all know, doing something quickly and incorrectly is more problematic. The police officers deserve a fair process,
Yes.
as do members of the community.
Okay. Because I've had the pleasure to meet with the new director, and I was taken back by the number of vacancies that she had. And I couldn't figure out, what happened here? Why there was such a dysfunctional operation?
Right, and we just addressed that point because there was a lack of executive director for a while. You're absolutely right, and it is not lost upon us even the minutia of what's happening with CPCs to get them up and going. And it is our goal, it is a primary goal for us to do that, get them operating in a way that they're within some guidelines or some methods. We want to be sure that there are systems and mechanisms in place that are operating when the
Right.
personnel is gone.
Right.
And so that the CPC wheel isn't reinvented every time there's a
Right.
new executive director or commissioners, getting them on the pace to anticipating vacancies in the commission. The operations have to continue, as Christine said, not only for the officers involved, but for the community. And so we are diligently working on that, meeting with CPC as a group, with Pat, meeting with individually. And I think we have done a good job in understanding both perspectives,
Right.
the officer side, the city side, and the CPC for the community. And being able to get that going. It is our goal to be sure, because as you know, that CPC for quite some time has not functioned the way it was designed to
Yes,
function.
yes.
And we're set on making sure that happens.
And they are currently, and as you know, as
You gotta
we
use
Charles,
the
use your
Yeah, you got to
mic.
use that mic.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And as we speak at the table right now, they're currently staffing up. They've got significant number of new staff coming on and looking to hire some additional people. So they've addressed those deficits.
Well, I met with the director, and I indicated we're here to work with her. We're here to help her. But I've been extremely disappointed in the CPC, and I want to set a view in public. We have given them everything that they've asked for from a budgetary standpoint, but we don't run it. We don't administer it. That's a separate entity, and they're in the charter, Section 115 of the charter. So we have been more than compliant to assist them in any which way possible, but I think there's been a great deal of apprehension on this side of the table as it pertains to their effectiveness. In fact, I'm waiting for the list from the Department of Public Safety, but they have sent over, I don't know how many positions within the command staff that have to be approved by the CPC, and we're talking years.
To both give the city credit and to give you
Right.
some comfort, as well as
Yeah.
to explain a little bit of what we're doing, is we actually have a meeting today with a number of stakeholders, the law department, the CPC, and the
Okay.
CDP, thank you. Too many initials sometimes.
I know.
With us to talk about some of those process problems. And the responsibility falls not only on the CPC. There is some lack of clarity that needs to be explored. I give the city credit because in addition to the work we are doing directly with stakeholders and trying to identify action items for who needs to fix what, the city has also, as you heard from the Pat, engaged with Jensen Hughes, a
Yes.
firm from Chicago that's a Department of Justice funded technical assistance body, to look at the constellation of oversight bodies and work to establish a clear process map so it's very clear what the authorities are, what the limits are, and how they work with each other.
Okay.
We have a meeting, as I said, later today to delve into a particular area of the work where we hope to create a more efficient, timely, and constructive process that includes that exchange of information.
Okay.
Yeah,
So- go ahead.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, and
Yes.
certainly not to, certainly not to defend the CPC, but during that time of those promotions, that was the time when they lacked board members, and the city had a rather drawn-out, extended process of putting new board members on, and they couldn't go to the committee to make those appointments without those board members.
Okay. So let's just wrap it up. So then so as of right now, on the 18th report, would you just run through that and give, again, you've got, there was a total of 18 sections, correct?
18 paragraphs,
18
yep.
paragraphs.
And of those 18 paragraphs, there are 5, starting from the far right, in general compliance, which means they're doing very, very well.
Okay.
The dark green and the blue are our goals.
Okay.
There are 5 where more work or institutionalization of a practice needs to happen in operational compliance. And there are total 7 in either partial compliance or non-compliance. We use this to really focus our work attention with the
Okay.
stakeholders. So we are going to be working, Charles told you about work groups.
Yes.
We will work very focused on the 3 paragraphs that are in non-compliance and the 4 that are in partial compliance to talk very specifically about what needs to be happening, demonstrated, and durable to achieve compliance.
Good. Okay, so let's move on. Number 2, section 2.
Section 2 is the community problem-oriented policing. What we're seeing across the division is that it is evolving appropriately and developing and deepening. This is another area where Jensen Hughes is providing some technical assistance. We are going to be doing an assessment, an assessment of this area of the consent decree later this year. It's unsurprising to us that each district operates slightly differently. Community policing really should be idiosyncratic to your neighborhood and your community. This is a big city with great and wide diversity, so it makes sense that things are not identical. One of the areas that we'd like to see more of is what we in the policing industry would call beat integrity. The neighborhood response group, the NRG, and the community policing officers really do better when they are assigned to an area and get to stay in that area. That helps the community understand
Yes.
who their officers are
That's right.
and be able to develop relationships. We've seen improvements with the actual problem-solving efforts, and we've learned from Jensen Hughes as recently as yesterday in a conversation that they were gratified to see that the concentration of problem-solving efforts overlays on a map where the city's greatest calls for service come from. That gives us the impression more data research needs to happen, that the problem-solving activities are actually happening where most of the problems are. So that's really good news. More of that sort of analysis will really help shape the CPOP effort. We'll also be looking at training. Training in CPOP is happening as we speak, and we're going to have some folks from the team observing some of the work that they're doing in the training program on CPOP.
Okay.
So similarly, we only have one paragraph that is in non-compliance, 6 in partial compliance. So that will be those 7 will be our focus. Operational compliance usually just needs a little push to get it to the next level.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on.
The next area is bias-free policing. Bias-free policing has a number of paragraphs that include the training and the policies, and the technical aspects of bias-free policing have been completed. As I say, getting the policies implemented and the training done. Areas where we believe there need to be continued training and other work fall in the area of analysis. So paragraph 265, which is not in the bias-free section, it's in the data section, but it requires analysis of bias, of all activities to indicate any evidence of bias. We see, and we'll talk about this more in the search and seizure section, that there's evidence of racial disparities in the search and seizures. Again, we'll talk about that. That could be evidence of bias. We do not know that yet. So the focus on the analysis and audits of officer activity really are important to understand and ensure that bias-free policing is not happening. So we're doing the working groups on this area as well as in some of the others.
Okay, thank you. Move on.
The next area is use of force. As you heard from the Pat, this is an enormous section of the consent decree for reasons that make good sense. There are 86 paragraphs. We look deeply at 84 of them. What's important to understand is in our assessment that we filed earlier in 2026, we looked at every use of force case from calendar year 2024, plus all level 3 cases from 2023. We looked at every single one, and we are not finding problematic use of force at the street level. We're finding that 97% of the uses of force on the street are within policy, and the remainder are any force violation is identified and dealt with appropriately by the chain of command. That is enormous, remarkable, and positive progress, obviously. The level 1s, I think the Pat explained this to you, those are the lowest levels of use of force. It could be when a subject complains about handcuffing, it could be a pistol point, it could be a takedown, and level 3s are things that could result in deadly force, very much more serious. That's a huge headline about use of force changes. There are paragraphs that remain, as you see, in non-compliance or partial compliance. And while those have been described as administrative in nature, we would push back on that a little bit. While they are administrative in nature, they are important integrity safeguards that are necessary for the division to employ. It's about tracking use of OC spray and what we now know as the taser. The consent decree refers to them as electronic controlled weapons, ECW. So those are the focus of our work in use of force and to ensure that things continue on this path. But we're fairly confident with what we've seen that the behavior of officers on the street relative to use of force and generally with supervisors has improved. There are areas that are in operational compliance where we'd like to see things in place for longer periods of time. Included in this section is the division's Force Review Board. The Force Review Board looks at randomly selected level 2 uses of force and all level 3 uses of force. One of the things that happened in the use of force, or the Force Review Board last fall, is there was a change in leadership. And it didn't go as smoothly as we would like, which points out the need for documentation of practice for systemic endurance when you have a change in personnel, not unlike what Melody talked about with other areas.
Was there any indication when looking at the use of force that police officers are disengaging more than ever before? Because I'm hearing that at neighborhood meetings.
That they disengaging in what regard?
They're not as aggressive as the residents would like to see them in dealing with problems on their street. I had this last night. I was confronted at a neighborhood meeting last night by a woman who came to the meeting and indicated she was in the park, and a gentleman, I wouldn't even call it a gentleman, individual exposed himself and attempted to pursue her, and according to her at this neighborhood meeting, that the officers responding wouldn't even engage. And I'm hearing this from more and more people saying that there's a standoffish, like they don't want to run the risk of being charged with being abusive or going over the line. I'm hearing that more and more frequently, that people believe the police are disengaging.
So I don't have evidence to that effect,
Yeah.
that it just is not available to me at the moment. So
Yeah.
the body-worn camera or the wearable camera system images that we look at usually are from a force incident or a stop and
Right.
and search. Those are cases where officers are actively involved, of course.
Okay.
I know that, there should be some backstops for this. One is there's a requirement that supervisors review random body-worn camera
Yes.
images. And that would be for not just for the incidents that
Yeah.
we're looking at, but for other incidents. So if they saw that, I would hope that they would call that out.
Okay.
There's a general sense across the country that when you have a consent decree, what you're referring to as disengagement, depolicing is another
Right.
word that happens. And categorically across the country, there's not evidence of
Okay.
that. I don't have the data points before me, but we can look at that. Typically, we would reference officer-initiated behavior, crime statistics, calls for service as a way to triangulate
Yes.
if depolicing is happening. Based on the number of officer-initiated activities that we see, I'd be surprised if that's a problem, which doesn't, of course,
Right.
take care of the incident that you've heard about.
Well, I asked the young lady, I want that in writing from her. I'm supposed to get that today. There was an officer in attendance from the 5th District
Yep.
at the meeting, and I told the group, if anyone feels that they have been given improper service or a lack of service, I need to know that.
Yes.
Members of council need to hear that.
Right.
Just as we want to hear that there's someone who's been abusive on the other side of the equation or disrespectful. So I'm waiting to hear that, and I'm going to direct that immediately. As soon as I get it, I'm going to direct that over to the safety director and Chief Todd. So I think this is, again, a very
Yes.
important area. So, okay.
I will affirm for the viewing public that people want to know when those things happen.
That's exactly.
And it's most helpful if you can provide time, date, location, and if you have officer information, that's
Yes.
also helpful.
Thank you very much. Proceed. Keep going.
Yeah. and-
Oh, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I attend roll calls quite a bit, and I engage with officers on the street quite a bit. And I talk with officers about their concerns about the consent decree. And constantly I assure them that if you are involved in constitutional policing doing your job, you have nothing whatsoever to be concerned about where the consent decree is concerned. And I've had that conversation repeatedly with officers on the street.
Good, thank you. Okay, let's move on. Crisis intervention?
I feel like Councilor Jones is going to think I'm staring at him as you don't need to move. You don't need to move. Okay, good, thank you. Crisis intervention is an area of great success, actually. And you can see that all paragraphs are in the dark green or the blue. As I said earlier, those are our goal spots. Dark green is general compliance. That tells us that all the paragraphs, all 29 of the paragraphs in CIT have been demonstrated to be in place, part of the culture, and moving forward. 8 are in substantial and effective compliance, indicating that we've seen those things in place for a couple of years. What we're looking for in crisis intervention is a sustainment period. We want to see that those 21 paragraphs that are in general compliance remain there, that there's no fallback, that the division and the city, this is a paragraph that invokes parts of the city beyond the division, that they can maintain that level of response. We've seen fewer arrests, we've seen more transports to emergency behavioral health services, we've seen less force on people with in behavioral crisis. So these are all really important things. Part of what's necessary for sustainment in crisis intervention at the practical level, not at the monitor level, probably is continued support for crisis centers, hospitals, a co-responder model, CIT training at the division, and all of that, of course, has dollar signs attached to it, but that's life in the 21st century,
Okay.
right?
Thank you. Let's move on.
The next section is search and seizures. We did an assessment and filed that, I think, in September of 2025. This is the first time that we did an assessment on search and seizure. This is, in many ways, the heart, along with use of force, of the consent decree because of the constitutional requirements here and constitutional protections. We saw that there were certainly all the policies and training around search and seizure had been implemented. That accounts for many of the paragraphs in operational compliance and general compliance. And we also looked at the reports and the body-worn camera for a random sample of both investigatory and traffic stops. Traffic stops are obviously generated from a traffic violation, and investigatory stops would be generated by other actions. And they can include pedestrian stops. The headline of our findings is that officers are not using canned or boilerplate language, which is prohibited by the policies as well as good practice, which is very, very good. They are generally able to articulate the reasonable suspicion or the probable cause for the stop. That's also super important and very good. We saw, and our reviewers noted that in traffic stops in particular, they found the police officers to be extraordinarily helpful in many ways. That's also really good feedback for the division. The concerns that we did find, and I mentioned earlier that if Dr. Dunn was disappointed he wasn't able to be here this morning because he had commitments at the university. We did find that blacks were searched 3 times more than white drivers, resulting in similar outcomes. Now, what does that mean? One answer could be because of the number of people of color who live in the community. But when you get similar outcomes from the search, when it happens 3 times more, it causes us to ask why. We do not know at this point why. Our job was to report on the data, not to dig into the data. We've encouraged the division to look more deeply.
Wait a minute.
The data, I'm sorry. We've encouraged the city to establish a more robust system of review and audit. You heard that they contracted with a outside consultant, Sigma Squared, to do some work. I'll speak about that in a minute. The point is that you could argue that when the results are the same, searching 3 times as many black people as white people, that the police are more thoughtful or focused or reliant on more objective measures when they search a person with white skin than a person with black skin. We also know, though, that searches and stops could result from adherence to data, looking at calls for service, looking at victimization, looking at specific traffic deployments, looking at certain deployment in response to calls for service. So it's important to me, that we be very clear with the facts. We found disparities that are concerning. And we believe that they need to be looked into more deeply. We are not saying that those disparities alone indicate bias or discriminatory practice. The Sigma Square report is something that we need to address here because we've heard this, we've read the media pronouncements on it, and we've paid attention to the PAT presentation. A member of this body or the public may say, well, you said, monitor, that there are disparities, and Sigma Squared said there are not. What is it? An important difference is we looked at all stops, or we looked at a sample of stops. That becomes the denominator, right? Sigma Square looked at only stops. So we start our review with at the moment of the stop. Sigma Square starts at review only with those that were stopped. I can see from your face I'm doing a bad job. You jump in.
Okay.
Not a bad.
Judge?
Yeah, not necessarily a bad job, but the denominator being different. We
Thank
looked
you.
at all the stops, so looking at the reasons for the stops.
That's what I tried to
Right.
say.
And Sigma Squares just looked at the outcomes of the stops.
Okay.
So that's a difference because our concern is the disparity that Christine just talked about was why are people of color or black drivers stopped or black people stopped searched 3 times more often, but yet contraband or evidence of a crime is discovered at the same rate where non-black people are stopped less. What are the reasons for such an increase or such a disparity in those that are stopped? Sigma Squared looked at after the stop happened, so not the reasons for the stop. We're wanting the department to focus on the reasons.
Okay.
As Christine said, it might not be anything unlawful, but they have to articulate the reasons for the disparity. So we looked at different denominators
Okay.
to come up with the results.
On the data that you have access to or you've looked at, were you able to drill down by the precinct, by the neighborhood, by either the census tract? I mean, what did you get? Because, again, as you've indicated, as you look at the city, I think it would be very important to look at that as well. I mean, where was the most significant action being taken by CPD in
Right.
those areas?
While Christine looks that up, you're absolutely right. And we've stressed kind of in all the sections that it touches on, it would be helpful for the chief, for the CDP, for council, for the council people to know where in the city it's
Yeah, I'd like to
happening
know that.
in your wards. And so even with in our criticism of the dashboards available and the data available, sometimes it's not broken down into districts. And we're trying to get that uniform across the way. So the research for search and seizure is divided by districts so that we can give that back to CDP to say, you know, the percentage was found more so in, you know, District 14, which I know doesn't exist, so I just put it out there.
Right.
District 14 more than you know, District 17.
And I would recommend that, again, you know, I'd like to know how we can break it down even more by zone car area, so we really understand where this is happening more frequently than other places
Right, and
in
it
the
will be
city.
helpful too, because the CDP will know, is this an area that has a lot of arrests, that has high drug population, and has
Right.
high crime?
Yeah. Okay, and have you communicated that to CPD, obviously?
We've strongly urged them to do that kind of analysis, right?
Okay.
Because Sigma Square says there's no process bias. And the process after the stop can be equal. It's what generates the stop that we're curious about. I couldn't find it on my computer, but I know that they have the data in smaller bits, absolutely. And that needs to be overlaid and compared in a methodological way that is beyond my ability to even talk about, but must include deployment, calls for service, victimization, right?
Councilman Jones, you had a question?
Yeah, well, you know, just to add my little 2 cents here, Mr. Chairman, I had an opportunity to go down to the Real Crime Data Center. I know at one point council had an opportunity to review that way back in about, I think it's 2018, 2019, we went there and looked at the data system. And so I went there lately. I know they've downsized it to a smaller room. They still have the bigger room, but where the real action takes place is in a smaller setting. of about maybe 6 workers. And what I found was, and I was super impressed, Mr. Chairman, with the capacity of their computer systems, all of the technology that they have at their fingertips. So what you're talking about now, they can quickly tell you exactly where the stops were at. They can tell you everything you need to know, Mr. Chairman, even right on down to how many shots were fired off in that area. So they have all of that data, they have all that information. And we spent $30-some million at one hit in golf to give them all the technology they needed. So I just think that, Mr. Chairman, a simple request from this table, we should be able to get all of that information and data to have it available here for this group, because I believe that most of our issues and problems are happening in the 4th District, where we have been plagued, unfortunately, for the last 30 years of high crime, no police in those areas to really help out. And we've had a burnout in the 4th District. People want to flee there. They want to come to the West Side districts because there's less crime. So I know that the crime, and when you look at the numbers, is overwhelming. Some of the police officers tell me, Mr. Chairman, that they can't wait to get out of the 4th District because it's a work overload and burnout on them as human beings. So the quality of their life being a police officer has been miserable. And so at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, I would request that we get that information from our police. Their technology is so advanced, you could probably speak to the computer and it gives you that information. That's how much data that they have in that one little
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you very
location.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move
So
on.
can we request that, Mr. Chairman?
We're going to ask for that. I mean,
Okay.
and I'm assuming you've asked for that as well, correct?
We received what we needed to do the requirements that are on us.
And then who, Mr. Chairman, then, because I didn't hear this, and then I'll yield the floor. Who is responsible for the why? To look really into this and ask why is it 3 times more? Who's doing that?
The division should.
Division.
Which division?
Of police.
So the police gonna police their own thing?
No,
to
it's,
tell us why?
Through the chair.
it's the
Thank you.
data that they should use. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. It's when we say there's this disparity, remember, we have to operate within the confines of the settlement agreement, the consent decree. And so when they're not in compliance, because of this is a concern, we say to CDP, this is a concern, we can't determine why. We'll be helpful in any way you can, but CDP, it's up to you to figure out, and boiling it down to districts as we can do, why is this happening? And that data source would be very helpful for them, but we're limited under the consent decree, so we'll be helpful.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the judge.
I would ask this too. How do you communicate to CPD?
Oh, countless ways, countless ways. We talk to the chief, we talk to deputy chiefs, we talk to the data folks, we talk to individual,
But is it written communication?
often
Text or email.
Text or-
Not
email.
email or phone.
email or phone.
Because I would
Or face-to-face.
suggest this and make this request. If you're sending, because I'm in this thing about transparency, I've always been. If you're sending emails to them with suggestions or recommendations, or you need to do this, we need to see that. The council needs to see that.
Many of the formal suggestions we make are through our written public products, actually.
Okay.
So, and I take your point. I wasn't trying to gloss
No,
over
no,
it.
no.
The search and seizure assessment, for example, paragraph by paragraph, says in order to increase your, every assessment says
Right.
this, paragraph by paragraph, in order to increase your compliance level, we recommend the following.
Yeah.
And so everything we share in those ways is available on the clevelandpolicemonitor.net website.
And with all due
So-
respect, Mr. Chairman, we'll do what you want, but you'd be overburdened.
No, I understand that.
Bless
But
you.
what I'm saying, it doesn't, it can be directed to the clerk's office. What I'm saying goes back to my original statement. We're in this going on 11 years. $50+ million, $10 million this year. I keep stressing to the administration, as I did yesterday at 1 o'clock, let's get this thing done. Let's get where we're not in compliance. Let's get it done. Let's figure out why we're not in compliance. I mean, my frustration was, we went, what, over 2 years? Maybe it was close to 3 years for not having an inspector general. I couldn't figure that one out. Why wasn't that position filled? That was part of it.
That's right.
You know, I mean, come on now, really?
What happened to the last guy?
So one of the ways that we're addressing that concern, you know, why are things not yet in compliance, is through working groups.
Right.
And what we're doing in those working groups is we use a chart similar to what the final pages of each assessment and the semi-annual report look like, which is the language of the paragraph at the compliance rating, and then with the working groups, for any paragraph that is red, yellow, or light green, we are identifying what we believe remains to be done to achieve compliance. And in the working group, working with various stakeholders, I suggest that Mr. C may be about to show us an example. What can we do together to advance these things? And sometimes it's something as simple as a documentation of a habit, or evidence that in a change in personnel, the new person will be able to pick up where you left off.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we are aware,
Right.
that the legislative body is aware where there are deficiencies, and that we want to make sure that they are taking the appropriate action to address those deficiencies. I'm reminded the Great Pyramids of Egypt were estimated, took 20 years to build. We're over halfway there with this descent decree. Okay. So I don't want to be on par with the Great Pyramids of Egypt as it
Absolutely.
pertains to the consent decree.
And if I can just add, since I still consider myself the newbie on the team,
Right.
one of the things as part of the work group that we do, and I want to tell this body, we consider it irresponsible if we as a monitoring team don't do just that. If things
Right.
aren't being done, and we're calling them out in the semi-annual reports, and we're calling them out in
Right.
the assessments, and we will call them out in this meeting, I would consider it irresponsible if we don't let you know.
Yes.
Because we're not going to sit here and say, fine, you don't want to do it, we'll be doing this for another 4 or 5 years. That would be irresponsible of this.
And that's one of the reasons why I've asked and started this process of bringing you to the table so you can make this presentation. So not only can members see this, our staff can see it, but the viewing public can see it as well. We want compliance. And, is everything going to be 100%? We know that's never going to be the case. But we want to make progress so we can get beyond, because I'll be the first to tell you, the Cleveland Police Department of today is different than it was 10 years ago.
Entirely.
And I know that, and I've been here all that period of time. So we have made progress, but we still got to get to the finish line. And I want to see us get to the finish line. Okay, keep going.
As an example of work group work, there are 4 paragraphs in the consent decree that relate to the district police committees. The 4 paragraphs are, the language of those 4 paragraphs is written out.
Yeah.
The colors correspond to the 18th semi-annual report rating. The final column, we call it expectations. These are what we believe we need to see to achieve compliance. And we'll be working with the DPC groups.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a copy of that so that we can have it?
I'll have our staff run a copy.
So
And
that's
the cover sheet too, that might be able to explain a little bit to us?
This is not all of, this is just a section.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
just
That
one
helped me take a
section.
look
Just
at
one
it.
section.
If we're gonna talk about it, I'd like to see it.
And we will ask officially for your entire document.
Can we
okay?
make a copy of it
Yeah,
right now?
But they don't have it right now. I don't believe they do. Okay.
I'd like to see it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
It's just a memo.
Wait a
from
minute.
Dr.
That's just,
Anderson.
if you could run a color
and,
copy.
and so
For
these
the
are
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members that are present.
so this is what we've collectively come up with as requirements for us to see as evidence that those things are happening.
Yes.
We then go to the work group that includes the appropriate stakeholders and get their input and feedback on them.
Okay.
Right?
It's like
So
an open book exam.
It's an open book exam. This is what we think we want to see. Does this make sense to you? If not, how do we tweak it together?
Okay.
And then how do we help you produce these things?
Okay, let's
And
move
that
on.
that goes to the heart of your question, which I
Right.
think is the question to be asking. What do we need to do to get this done? What do
Okay.
we need to do to get
Right.
this done? And that says, this is what we think you
Okay.
need to do.
Accountability.
Accountability is the next section. This has three major considerations in it. The first is internal affairs. Internal affairs is obviously inside the Division of Police.
Right.
And they review any allegations of misconduct that could involve criminal activity. OPS and CPRB, obviously important oversight bodies that predate the consent decree, that are the recipient of community complaints, complaints from the public on anything that is not likely to be a criminal case. And then finally, the meting out of discipline. Discipline involves both the chief's office and the director of public safety at DPS, because there are certain charges or offenses that have a higher level of discipline, and anything over 10 days needs to go to the director's office. We will be doing assessments of each of those three sections in this calendar year. We are currently in the process where, and we believe they're overlapping. We're doing them as separate assessments because, as you can see, there are 74 paragraphs there. Our subject matter experts are working very closely with each other on these three different assessments. Just briefly, internal affairs, some of the highlights that we've seen recently during this period of review, they've done a remarkable job codifying and strengthening the review they do of applicants for investigator positions in the IA section. That's really important. They've also improved the regularity and the quality of training that their investigators get. It's happening routinely through the year with boosters almost. Great work at IA. OPS and CPRB, OPS in particular, not unlike CPC, has been plagued with a churn of staff. We think that's beginning to stabilize. There's an interim director there now, but we understand that there will be a selection soon for a permanent director. They're working very well with CPRB. We've learned that since the completion of this reporting period, so we don't talk about that much in the report, but we're pleased to see the partnership and collaboration that's happening. In discipline, we have some early reviews that make us curious about what we see as different ways of handling discipline between the chief's level and the director's level. So we're going to be digging more deeply into that to ensure that there's consistency and alignment sort of with values and how we address certain kinds of behavior.
Okay, thank you. Keep going. Transparency and oversight.
Transparency and oversight, two major sections in here, both the Inspector General and data work, data collection and analysis. There are 7 paragraphs that relate specifically to the Inspector General, as you talked about earlier, Mr. Chair. 4 of those paragraphs are in partial compliance, so there's work to be done. The paragraphs that are in operational compliance include the job description, the relevant background and appropriateness of the current incumbent, and things like that. What lacks is the codification of the IG as a part of city government. Unlike OPC and CPC, there's no charter amendment. We're not recommending or suggesting that's necessary, but there's also no governing policy for all of government, what the Inspector General of Public Safety can and should be doing. It's quite clear in the consent decree, but that hasn't been translated into an operational practice. And that's one area that we think is a concern and a limitation.
And it's up to the safety director. Who's to develop that?
I think it's probably a collaboration among the law department, the safety director, and the Inspector General's office. Thank you.
Okay.
The next part of the transparency and oversight section revolves around data collection and analysis. To the point that Councilor Jones made earlier, The CDP has done a remarkable job in increasing its capacity to collect data. It's even added to its presentation of data. Working with the Urban AI Initiative, you can look at the portal on the website and see a lot more data. The consent decree requires some sophisticated analyses of data, and that's a place where we're not seeing it with the same level of robustness. There are 4 paragraphs that require certain kinds of analytical reporting, and those have not been routinized or systematized into the course of business. And that's what we're looking for there. There have been years where we've not seen some of those reports, or those reports as required have not been complete and in accordance with the consent decree. So the areas where we see work, and we have subject matter experts on our team working with CDP's data team and the PAT to raise their level of that kind of reporting. That kind of reporting is really important, not just for managerial oversight, but also for residential and political small p oversight, right? It's something you deserve. You need to be able to look at not just raw data, but what's the story the data are telling, right?
Okay, we moving on?
Officer assistance and support is a big area in terms of paragraphs. Much of this improvements here, the council can take credit for, because as you've stated directly, you've made significant investments. The categories here are training, equipment and resources, recruitment and hiring, performance evaluations, promotions, and staffing. Training, we did assessments in each of these areas this past year. The first ones, for many of them, training did very, very well. There's a couple of areas of concern. The field training officer manual has been outdated. The policy's outdated. I learned earlier this week that we should expect some rewrites by the end of the week or early next week. So when we call out things that need to be done, generally we're seeing the appropriate response. Equipment and resources, I cannot speak enough about the changes I've observed in the 10 and a half years about equipment in this city. And again, you take the lion's share of credit for that, for investing in it.
Which is a large part of that $50 million.
Which is an enormous part of that $50 million.
We spent a lot of money, I can tell you that right now.
And some of those dollars would have needed to be spent eventually with or without a consent decree. And some of those dollars are not one-time expenses, as you well know. As we increase equipment, not only are there maintenance and licensing fees, but also you need to buy zone cars every year so that you never have to buy 150 again. You need to buy computers every year so you never have to buy a massive quantity again, right?
Mr. Chairman, do we have a breakdown of that 50 million?
We have it, our staff has it by year, the 50, but I don't know if they have it broken down like by equipment and personnel and all.
Can
that.
we
We'd
can
have
we
to
get
ask.
it broken down? Because last time we had the generality of this
Okay.
information, it was misconstrued as if the team was making all this money,
no.
and it wasn't the case.
No.
And I want to be able to, instead of tossing numbers around,
Well,
I like to see the
the
evidence
fif-
of the 50
50
million
mi-
spent,
the 50
so that we'll
million
know what it is. Because we
wait a
had a
minute.
monitor resign rather.
No, the 50
and
million
I got
was
issues
for
with that.
oversight, not for equipment.
Well, I just want to know what the 50 million
Okay.
breakdown is. I don't care
Okay,
what
we'll
it
make
is.
that request
Whatever the
to
$50 million
staff.
is,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I
Right.
should have the right to
Right.
see that information in
you
front
do.
of me.
And we're very proud of the fact that we pushed for a long time for the body cams,
That's right.
for the dash cams, to improve equipment, because we're tired of looking at raggedy police cars,
That's
which
right.
that were not very pleasant to look at, and I believe very disrespectful to the men and women in blue who we asked to drive these and patrol our neighborhoods. And right now, the challenge is to the viewing public, because with the most recent purchase, those cars now are costing us around $80,000 a car
That's right.
to fully equip them, to purchase the vehicle and equip them. So the days of buying police cars for $30,000 are over.
That's right.
Those days are long gone. So we know what the equipment
Unless we
purchases.
buy it from China.
Right. So keep going. Keep going.
Through the chair to the body, relative to the funds, the monitoring team expenses are, over 10 years, were just under $11 million. So, and we're roughly on that same sort of spend, which is just over $1 million per 12-month period. You can't buy a personal vehicle for $30,000 anymore either. And these are have far more levels of equipment in them. In-car computers, for example, are part of that cost.
Yes. Thank you.
Recruitment and hiring is an area that we've assessed previously and then did a reassessment of this year. Many of those paragraphs are in general compliance. There's one area where continued work or documentation of work is necessary. When the division hires people with a previous law enforcement experience, there's a requirement that they do a thorough review of their prior use of force, their use of force training, and any civilian complaints lodged against them. And we believe that's happening. The documentation was rather scant, so that's an area for improvement. Performance evaluations and promotions is an area that we're thrilled is getting new attention. You heard, I don't remember which member of the PAT spoke about the benchmark analytics, which is a contractor that's been hired to create some programming idiosyncratic to the division for both the officer intervention program and the performance evaluations. The changes in performance evaluations that are happening right now are to make sure that the evaluation form itself comports with the requirements of the consent decree to include evidence of community policing and CPOP activities. Promotions is a complex area. It involves the Division of Public Safety. It involves civil service. It involves the Division of Police. And that's an area where we need to do some work. There was a policy shared with us for a revision to the promotion policy. It was shared with us last year. We made some suggestions that were not endorsed, which means we haven't finally approved that policy, so there's some work that needs to be done there. Staffing, there's only 3 paragraphs, I think, in the staffing section. Each one of those has been found to be in substantial and effective compliance. We've made one recommendation that the division consider revisiting their staffing model simply because the times have changed. We don't have as many personnel as we once did.
Yes.
That staffing plan was completed, I think, in 2019, so it's worth a review. I heard you ask, Mr. Chair, members of the PAT, if there were any standards in the consent decree relative to staffing levels.
Yes.
There are not.
There are not.
Much of staffing levels in major police departments across the country are consistent with your values, your priorities, and how you deploy people. Having beat integrity is important, and having an appropriate ratio of officers to sergeants as well as other supervisory personnel is important.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Jones.
When we look at what the monitor is saying about, I guess, best practices, is that what we'll be talking about, best practices?
Part of it is, I'll answer some
Okay.
brief.
So
Part of it-
since we've looked at other models, right? So what should we, or what are you saying we should do in order to upgrade our system where we have the appropriate, because that's the issue here.
Right.
What we've been dealing with in the 4th District, having the appropriate staffing levels that are in place, and then make sure, Mr. Chairman, I caught this in terms of, what the criteria is, what your goals are, as well as what the needs may be. At one point, sitting here at this table years ago, there was the thought that wherever the calls and demand for services were at, or where we're going to place our assets. And so that's not the case, because the 4th District, unfortunately, has not received the kind of assistance and help that it is needed. It has been struggling now for 30 years, and those territories, Mr. Chairman, that it covers is predominantly the east side, all of the east side of the city of Cleveland for the most part. And not having the appropriate staffing levels, not having the appropriate systems set up, has led to fatigue, burnout of our men and women who work in the 4th District, and it's like that's a unspoken thing that people don't really want to talk about publicly, but it is an issue. And crime, Mr. Chairman, is absolutely off scale. There's no other crime being committed at the levels that is being committed throughout the city of Cleveland, in the southeast section and the 4th District. And you can't compare. You can take 2 or 3 districts and combine them, and they're equivalently of the 4th District in terms of its crime and all the stuff that's happening. And that's based on, Mr. Chairman, looking at all the reports going to the crime district, seeing all the spots, because we have the technology now to be able to look at what areas are like overwhelming and blowing up in terms of gunfire, and the 4th District beats them all, hands down.
Thank you,
and
Councilman.
we beat them all in terms of car crashes, accidents, and other statistical information that the police have gathered. So I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, a little bit more about how we can do best practices as relates to making sure that we have the appropriate staffing levels in the 4th District.
Thank you, Councilman.
And from the monitoring team standpoint, we operate under the consent decree, the settlement agreement, same document, adopted by the court, but that the parties put together, the City of Cleveland and the Department of Justice, back 11, 12 years ago. And so we are confined to that document, and your law department makes sure we stay confined to that document. So there are times, again, we feel our professional responsibility is to, if we go outside of the document and we'll recommend some best practices based on the change in times, they can only be that. And that you will hopefully see and adopt, and that CDP will use, but we cannot require it and use it as a mark to do compliance. We only can assess compliance within the confines of the agreement. So for instance, staffing, it is 3 paragraphs. Everything is in substantial and effective compliance. We won't evaluate that anymore. You'll be in the sustainment period, and at which time, if we get wind of anything that shows you might not be in compliance, excuse me, then we'll say that. But right now, we're not assessing that anymore. And your law department will be sure we don't assess that anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Supervision.
Thank you. Supervision is also an area where there are paragraphs that talk about 3 different things. The Officer Intervention Program, supervisory reviews, and the wearable camera system. You heard a lot about the Officer Intervention Program from the PAT team. This is the program that is I would call it an augmentation to safety, health, and wellness of officers. As they said, it's the aggregation of a variety of data points to help the division understand if an officer may need sort of some extra help or intervention. I think about it as career prevention and individual safety. That's an area that feels very important. It's deeply connected to health and wellness, as I said. The benchmark analytics team is working with the division and the PAT to create this and have this up and running. We're really excited about it. Unfortunately, is behind its, bless you, it's behind its goal dates, but that's often what happens with implementation of new things. We'll be doing an assessment on this whole section later this year. We have not done we will be, but have not done an independent assessment of supervisor activity. As you can imagine, and you probably are aware, supervisors and supervision is implicated throughout the consent decree. We've looked at it specifically with use of force and search and seizures, and we've seen, as you've already indicated, different behavior recently than we saw 10 years ago. Supervisors are more engaged.
But that being said, going through the reports, as I've looked back over them, in each one of your assessments, in your reports to the federal court and ultimately then to city council, supervision continues to be the area where there is noncompliance, the largest number of noncompliance. And I'm trying to understand why is that? What have you been able to pinpoint why? Supervision, that's the police department.
Right.
That's the brass. That's the people who run the police department. And so here again, we've got in this report, number of non-compliant, 10 out of 19.
Nice.
This continues to be the overriding area where we are in non-compliance, and I'm frustrated over that.
I'm just going to check because I wouldn't have said that it's a theme across all our assessments. I was prepared to say that in use of force and search and seizure, we've seen appropriate levels of engagement by supervisors. We know that the chain of command is able to identify problematic uses of force. I'm just going to check the...
But here you have, again, there's 19 sections in this report. There's 10 areas of noncompliance under supervision. No substantial effective compliance at all.
There's not going to be anything in substantial and effective because we have not done an assessment of this category of work yet. That's planned for this year. The other paragraphs that are in noncompliance are, interestingly, there are 4 related to office supervisors using the officer intervention program for decision-making purposes. They cannot use the officer intervention program for decision-making purposes because it doesn't yet exist. So
Well-
that's why they're non-compliant.
Well, did they know that?
Yes, they know that.
Okay.
That's 4 of the non-compliant in that section. Other non-compliant in this section are related to performance evaluations and promotions, areas that we've already discussed. So in the supervision section, think of it not so much as supervisors on the street, but supervision of activities. And some might say some of these are administrative, but that's why you see so many paragraphs that are in non-compliance, is because they've not complied with the performance evaluation requirements of the consent decree, or the promotion paragraphs of the consent decree, or the OIP paragraphs of the consent decree. And therefore, supervisors looking at the OIP, those are the non-compliant paragraphs.
And has the safety director, the chief, the command staff given you a proper response back?
In part, benchmark analytics that was procured in, I don't know, late 24, probably 2024, we were told directly that would answer the questions on OIP and performance evaluations. So we recognize that as underway, but I can't mark it in anything other than non-compliance because it doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And then the other areas that are non-compliant, performance evaluations and supervision, we've already talked,
Yes.
performance we've already talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, if I might, Mr. Chairman, you asked the right questions, and I think the right people need to be at the table in response to those questions.
And I'm going to continue to ask the questions because we got to move on. We got to get moving here. I mean, every member of this body has so much on their plate to contend with, more so than ever before. I'm dealing with more issues today, as I just said to a group last night where I heard this complaint from this young lady. I'm dealing with more issues today than I ever have in my entire career here, which is a long time. I'm dealing with more quality of life issues. I'm dealing with more concerns. You name it, across the board. And so here we are within a city service as critical as the division of police. We want to make sure our police department, besides being reflective of our city, we want to make sure our police department is being well managed. I want to stress that again, is being well managed, because we got into this situation almost 11 years ago because it was not well managed.
Yeah.
And there were obvious complaints that were not being addressed by the Cleveland Division of Police and the administration at that time. And that's why we're in this situation. And I'm trying to figure out, and I continue to say to the safety director, who I meet with every week, we got to move in a direction so we can part company with you lovely people at some point, okay?
Agreed.
But we got to get there.
That's right.
We got to get to the finish line.
I so
Yeah.
appreciate the way you set that up, because you made very clear that much of this work is beyond the work of the men and women who are doing police work on the street.
That's exactly.
And that you say both, this is a changed police department and it needs to be managed well. And part of the well-managed requires systems and processes.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to, and the monitor said earlier that the monitoring team the monitor said earlier, the monitor teams make suggestions and they are not embraced. This is not a matter of potato patata.
Right.
These are suggestions based on what the consent decree calls for.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Thank you.
This last category, section 11, is called policies. There's no chart there because we've not previously assessed this area. As Melody and I became the leaders of this team, we read through every paragraph yet again and realized that there was a section here, paragraph 341 to 349, had very clear directives to the city and the division that were not part of any prior assessments. So we're working with a team of people at the division to make sure this is addressed. And it's very much about the management you speak of, Mr. Chair, which is the annual review of certain policies and those kinds of things. This is work that has to get done, and it's important backstops.
Okay, keep going.
This next slide, I'm going to turn the mic and the pointer over to Melody, who will talk about our work going forward.
Judge?
And I'll be as brief as possible
Go ahead.
here. We have a very ambitious 2026 monitoring plan. To your point, of getting moving and keeping the gas on the pedal,
Yeah.
we are. And to the extent that we fall behind, there's any delay, we certainly leave room for the city stakeholders, whoever we need information from, to ask for extensions, some additional time. We meet with anybody who wants to meet with us before our deadlines come up. But it is a very, very ambitious 2026 plan. You think that our pants were on fire more so.
Okay.
So we just want to let you know, and those are the areas in CPOP and data collection. We will be doing as many assessments as possible in 2026. And I want to bring out for this too, is when we talk about the assessments we've already done that are in a sustainment period. Don't worry about, well, are they forever in a sustainment period loop that we'll be looking at forever and forever? Some of these will naturally die off because while other areas are being assessed, that sustainment period is running. Okay. Again, and we won't reevaluate those, we won't reassess those. Only if something comes up that looks like we might need to ask some questions will we do that. So then we hope to hand things over to your oversight bodies after we're gone, of sustainment things that have worked. So that's that, and the rest of that slide
Okay.
speaks for itself.
Keep going.
So that tells you about the work that we have underway. Again, it speaks for itself. It talks about the technical assistance from Jensen Hughes. We hope that helps with an overall
Okay.
plan of what your oversight bodies will do moving forward. And then we'll get to, unless there's any questions, I'll go back on our plan for 2026.
Well, before you get in, I thank you very much for providing your billings. Here we have billings for the members.
Right.
I have questions on that. But at this point, you've given us, in essence, you've presented to us your 18th review of the Cleveland Division of Police. Give us your general synopsis, opinion. We know we've made progress. We know that. We have made progress, and I've said that publicly. Where do we need to focus? What do we have to do in layman's terms for the viewing public? What do we do to go to the next level?
I think you continue working as diligently as we can. We try to lay out the roadmap to every city stakeholders in what we have to do to get to substantial and effective compliance. And we lay out those areas that we will be assessing. And the sheet that we just gave you copies of.
Yes.
This is your open book exam. This is what you need to do. To the extent that anything is problematic for anyone, they pick up the phone and call or email us. We make ourselves available at all times to talk to anyone about something that's not understood, something that they don't see with the law department. And Pat says, we don't see that as part of the consent decree. We hash that out. And one thing to bring up too, I think the council member House Jones was concerned about the surveys that the monitoring team is required to do,
Yes.
surveys that Pat wants to do. We have a mandate in the consent decree to do them. Anything else the city does is not within our purview about that. And so that's what much forward.
My question to you is this. Do you ever, or have you ever met with, has the monitoring team ever met with not only the safety and the chief, but the command staff? Have you ever had that meeting at a table where all the deputy chiefs are there and the commanders are there? Have you ever had a meeting like that?
We've not done that since August, no. We're not opposed to. We're happy to do that.
But you have done it.
I don't know that we've met with the command staff as a group over my tenure, and if it's over the last 10 years, and if it has happened, I wasn't privy to it.
See-
So it doesn't mean it didn't.
Okay, well, and
I'm sorry to be so vague.
No, I want to make that recommendation,
Sure.
that you meet with the command staff and lay it out to them so they can hear it firsthand what needs to happen here. Because council, as you know, we're prohibited. We don't appoint the command staff. They are appointed by the mayor. The mayor appoints the safety director, appoints the chief, and then they appoint, with his concurrence, the command staff, the deputy chiefs and the commanders. So we deal with who's appointed. But at some point, I've always looked upon that, they are an internal team, and they have got to be responsible to achieve our goals.
Yes, and they are not the only ones that are responsible,
Well, I
right?
understand that, but they're in charge.
Well, they're in charge of what they're in charge of.
Right.
But there are big parts of this consent decree that is not yet in compliance, that are beyond them and them alone, right?
Okay.
You
So
said what is again?
It's beyond them and them alone. For example, civilian oversight. The civilian oversight bodies, particularly CPC, continues to require supports from a number of different entities, including ourselves, but the law department in particular, so that they can, and HR, human resources, so that they can continue to build the necessary infrastructure to be a highly functioning and mature audience, you
Yes.
know? And it's not because they're immature. I use that word meaning
Right.
evolved, that they've been in existence long enough, right?
Right.
This is a group that became a city entity very recently, right? It's not as if they entered with a full set of policies or with support
Right.
staff to be functioning. So they still require a lot of input from law and HR. Expeditious and thoughtful replacement of outgoing commissioners, whether they are termed out or resign midterm, is not yet a process that's well defined. So that's on the law department as well as the CPC, right? Promotion policy comes from the Department of Public Safety, but it invokes the city's civil service department to get it right. So some of the things that remain to be done are very many of them are beyond the singular purview of the division. That's not to say we won't meet with the command staff. I think it's a lovely idea, and I'd look forward to it.
I just, because again, as I've said repeatedly at this table, the challenges that we have on this side is that we do not hire, we do not
Right.
fire, we do not deploy, we cannot administer. We're prohibited by law. We provide the funding, which we have, and not only required, but then in addition, we can't run the CPC.
Right.
The mayor appoints
That's right.
the members of the CPC. We're not responsible for their behavior. their interaction with one another. We have to observe it like everybody else has observed it, and you see what we've got. And we're hoping with the new director, because I had an opportunity, again, to meet with her, and I was impressed. And I've said to her, the council, we are here to help you. We're not here to be adversaries. We're here to work together with the CPC. But we can't run your shop, and it's not our intention to run your shop. So I appreciate the comments that you have come to the table with, all three of you that are here. Councilman Casey, you have a question.
Mr. Chairman, I've got so many questions.
Just go ahead.
I'm going to try to keep it to my
I will.
to my 10
And
minutes.
everyone, we'll put you down again for 10, and then we'll have to roll you over.
right.
We'll do that.
Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Cole, Your Honor, Judge Stewart, and Mr. C, constitutional policing, crisis intervention, search and seizure. Those are the three main topics of the consent decree, correct? That's what we're here on.
Yes, I think use
Okay.
of force falls into constitutional policing.
Right,
Sorry,
right.
through the chair.
It's, right, okay. Constitutional policing, in the last 10 years, do you know how many complaints have been justified that a Cleveland police officer did not use constitutional policing when dealing with an individual?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I have no idea what that number is off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Are there any?
I'm
Okay.
unequipped to answer that
So as the
question.
monitor, you can't tell us whether there's constitutional policing occurring or not, because you don't know the answer to that.
I think we can certainly say it's occurring.
I'm just asking.
Constitutional policing is occurring, and we can
Right.
say that.
Okay, so you can
Without
safely say
the answer to your
constitutional police, the Cleveland Division of Police are policing constitutionally.
Generally, yes.
Okay, okay.
And you can
Crisis
probably get
crisis intervention. You said yourself, great success, great success. I think that's one thing that the city and the Cleveland Division of Police, the way we do crisis intervention now, is something that we should be proud of, thanks to the help of the consent decree and making us put that in place. But I think constitutional or crisis intervention, check mark. I think we're doing an outstanding job. Search and seizure. Can you name, Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Cole or to the judge or Mr. C, can you name how many times there's been a complaint filed against a Cleveland police officer and that complaint has been justified for illegal search and seizure?
Ms. Cole, whoever can answer.
Through the chair, I'm sure that data is available. It is not on my head.
Okay.
And we have to be
And-
careful using the term illegal, because of course that implies criminal.
Okay, I don't, I think you know what I'm trying to,
I
I
do
think
know
you know
what
what I'm
you're
trying to do. I don't
saying.
want to
Yes, I
say
do know what
illegal,
you're
I want to say
saying. Right.
unconstitutionally
Right, I do.
searched and seized, or what, I think you know
I do
the
know.
the gist of what I'm trying to, again, I'm not an attorney, I'm just trying
I
to
do
get
get
the
it.
gist of the consent
I
decree
do.
out, right?
It was more for the listening audit.
Right, okay. And that's your legal mind jumping into place. And Mr. Chairman and Ms. Cole, did I hear you correctly, what you said in the search and seizure aspect, that this is the first time you've done an assessment on the search and seizure?
You did hear that correctly.
In 10 years, this is the first time that the monitor has assessed a third of what we would consider the consent decree. After 10 years, the monitor has only assessed it one time?
And I can tell you why. It's my memory that the division implemented the policies and the training and data collection processes 5 years ago.
Okay, even so, in 5 years, the monitoring team has only assessed the search and seizure aspect one time. That's just it's either, I mean, it's
Right.
a yes or a no.
I mean, the way you ask the question suggests that's either, malpractice, malfeasance, or
I'm not assuming
unusual.
anything.
Okay, through the chair,
I'm
please.
not assuming anything. I'm just asking a question.
I wasn't suggesting you were assuming that. My ears heard it that way, and so I'd like to explain that you're absolutely correct. This is the first time we've assessed it. Yes, it's absolutely the first time in 5 years. You don't assess the project or a area as enormous as that until you're confident that everybody's been sufficiently trained on the policies, that the policy's in place, that they've had the opportunity to do their own practice and internal review. So the timing of that assessment is, as with all of them, is somewhat loosely negotiated with the city about when there's a sufficient readiness.
Okay.
And so that's why it doesn't happen the day that the
Okay,
information
I'm just,
Understood.
you know, I'm just asking. I only have a certain amount of
Got
time
it.
here. All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Cole, can you show us exactly where in the consent decree this 5-tier compliance rating system is? The non-compliance, partial compliance, operational, your 5-tier?
Correct.
Where is that defined in the consent decree?
It's not defined with the degree of specificity that I shared. It's not defined in any consent decree with that level of specificity.
Okay.
Somewhere around paragraph 375, where it talks about the monitor's responsibility, it talks about that we have this responsibility to assess. So what was done many years ago, prior to my term as monitor, is the then monitor looked at other monitoring team assessment levels and developed one for the city of Cleveland. So it's relatively consistent with existing best practices across the country.
Okay,
That
so
both parties agree to.
So if they're informal, right, which they're informal because they're not defined in the
They're
consent.
agreed
I think you used the word informal in one of your reports, or somebody did, okay. How does the city know for certainty that it has to satisfy them? I mean, because I think these paragraphs keep moving. Sometimes you're compliant, sometimes you're non-compliant. Sometimes, you know, in this own reporting, in your own reporting here, you know, and we've had this discussion even prior to you being here. Once you're compliant, are you always compliant, or can you move out of compliance?
Correct.
So this is why I'm
Sure.
asking that. If it's an informal thing, how does the city know that? We'll take, for example, hire an inspector general. You're supposed to check it off, but then the inspector general, you know, they're compliant, but then the inspector
Understood.
general moves on. Now we don't have one. Now you're moving out of that compliance into a non-compliance. Who, you know, so that, and if you know my history with this consent decree, that's how are we ever going to be able to
Understood.
achieve what needs to be achieved? So if you could just address
Sure.
that real quick, because I do have a lot.
And I'm glad you asked the question. Through the chair, there's a couple of questions embedded in there. The difference between a formal assessment, which are those independent documents that were filed pretty consistently through September to February on categories of the work, are formal assessments that happen and are rated against agreed upon specifics, much like the document that was passed out mid-meeting. So I've heard the phrase before, the goalposts change. The goalposts don't change. The clarity of what the consent decree means is translated into that evidentiary column that you see on that handout.
All right.
Informal may have come into the vernacular because during the semi-annual report review, without the assistance of a full and comprehensive methodology, we may make an assessment because an activity has happened or has not happened. Your example of the Inspector General is a great one. At one point in time, there was an incumbent. Therefore, you were compliant. Then, as the chair indicated, for 3 years, there was not one. So yes, it became
Right.
non-compliant.
Okay, just moving on. Can you show it to Mr. Chairman and Ms. Cole? Can you tell us in the consent decree where it defines community trust as a compliance requirement?
The first section, excuse me, through the chair, the first section of the consent decree, paragraphs like, I don't know, 23 to 35 or something in that order, is called community engagement and trust.
Okay.
Certainly, trust is a common language that is used in terms of community engagement, community policing, legitimacy, procedural justice. It's part and parcel of constitutional and contemporary policing.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and Ms. Cole, is the city in compliant with Section 3, paragraphs 14 to 22, which deals with the Community Police Commission?
Paragraphs 3
Okay.
through 22 are
No,
not.
Section 3, paragraphs
I'm
14
sorry.
to 22. I think if I read it correctly, that's the one that actually establishes the Cleveland Police Commission through the judge. Now, that may have changed hands and orders because it was done by a charter amendment. But are we being held up in section 3, paragraphs 14 to 22?
Because of formation?
Yeah, because of the formation. So in the consent decree, the Cleveland Police Commission was supposed to be established anyways by the judge.
Yes.
Okay, but that didn't happen, right? So paragraph section 3, 14 through 22, we can say should not even exist because it never happened. It never occurred, right? Even though it occurred via charter. So is section 3, paragraphs 14 to 22 being held against us for compliance?
I'm not sure where you say that the CPC was supposed to be formed by the judge.
I don't have it in front of me.
fine.
I just,
Okay.
you know,
I think
I'm
there's-
just going off my notes.
Sure,
when
there's
I
a
was-
little nuance in there.
Right, but you know what I'm
I
talking
do.
about, correct? Okay.
So paragraph 17,
Go ahead.
paragraph 17, section C says, on an ongoing basis, we should assess the CDP's community activities and make recommendations related to community engagement and community confidence. That paragraph is currently in non-compliance. So
Okay.
the consent decree and the charter work together.
All right.
And the consent decree was modified after the charter.
Right.
To take that
Okay.
into
So
consideration.
I think the quick answer is you're not being held in non-compliance due
Okay,
to formation.
all right, I just want to make sure, and I'm really trying to go quick, so, and I'm just giving you these questions, maybe even you could follow up with these, right? Does anybody in the monitoring team earn over $50,000?
Annually?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, does any member of the monitoring team, or does the monitor himself have a contract with the city of Cleveland?
No.
Okay, so that's something that we have to look at because according to our Board of Revisions and our charter, anything over $50,000 is supposed to be okayed through this council and a contract, and it's supposed to be going to the Board of Revisions. So I think we just need to kind of keep that in the back of our minds as well. And that's a question that I'm going to have for the law department on whether individual monitors who are earning over $50,000 need a contract with the city. I'm not sure how this goes.
Right,
'cause-
and that's,
Okay,
obviously,
wait,
that's
through
what
the
the
chair.
city, they
Right.
have to do.
Yeah.
But technically,
Right.
the contract is with the lead monitor only.
Right, okay. So do you have a contract with the city of Cleveland?
I do not.
Okay.
There's a joint order that the judge approved by the Department of Justice and the city of Cleveland that I be appointed monitor.
I know,
But that's the-
I get that, but I know that our charter calls for
Time.
anything over 50,000.
Right.
If I could just have a
Understood.
couple extension, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
and because I can put you back on the list, Council.
I know, but I got to go pick my kids up from
Okay.
school too.
Okay,
It's
go
it's
ahead,
running
go
late. Can you identify a current systematic federal constitutional violation by the Cleveland Division of Police that requires the continued federal court supervision today?
Lack of full compliance with the consent decree as determined by the court.
And that's a systemic federal constitutional violation?
Can you repeat the question? Do
All
we
right.
know of a?
Can you identify a current systemic federal constitutional violation by the Cleveland Division of Police that would require continual federal court supervision today? A current case.
That's really a broad legal question because we operate within the consent decree.
But we do not, you can't point to a specific incident that has happened recently and said this is unconstitutional, this therefore.
We could point to actually many.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm asking.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not trying to gotcha. I'm just
we
asking.
can point to.
All right, and then real quick, I want to touch on this, and this is
I
probably
just want to
for
make sure I heard,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
for Judge
Did you
Stewart.
say that you can point to many different?
Well,
Incidents.
We can point to federal violation to the extent that even with search and seizure and use of force,
Correct.
that there's not full compliance with certain things. That means there are some things that are still not going on. Some of them are more administrative and policy.
Well,
but-
and that's what I'm kind of
Yes,
getting
yes,
to, right? Because I
yes.
think we're here to change the philosophy and the training and
Right.
of the men and women in blue who are on the streets.
Right.
Right.
And to
And
the-
I think a lot of what we're dealing with are not the men and women on the streets right now.
that's right.
That's correct.
It's in City Hall, it's the administration, and I think that our men and women in blue who are out there doing the job are doing the job
Without question.
without a question.
I think you're right.
the way they should be doing the job now.
Right.
And much different than they were 10 years ago.
right.
So I think this whole consent decree stuff is at an administrative level, and it has nothing to do with how we're actually policing our
Well, I
streets
wouldn't say
today.
it had nothing to do,
Uh, it-
because the
I'm-
last thing you want to do is spend all this money on the men and women on the streets doing a great job that then gets backslid.
No, I understand
Okay.
that, but I think when people think the consent decree, they think of
The police.
the police,
That's
right?
right.
And I think that and you'll probably be admittedly say so, yes, that I think we're beyond that point. And I think that's because of the training that they're receiving, because of the crisis intervention, because of, the constitutional policing
I think
that
that's a
is
fair
going on. I think that is fair statement. And I think the way that we're being policed on the streets is much different today than it was 10 years ago. And I think a lot of these hiccups or these obstacles that we're running into are not with the men and women on the street. It's everybody in a white shirt and above. I'll just say that. Okay.
There are occasional hiccups.
I understand.
Right, that's all.
There's an occasional hiccup in everything, right? But I'm just saying, I do believe that we have changed the philosophy and the way that we police in the city of Cleveland. Now,
Fair.
and I'm just going to throw this one out here because now I'm just asking for myself, Mr. Chairman, to Judge Stewart, right? Because I think you'd be the one to be able to answer this. The federal statute authorizing consent decree, which is 34 USC, I'm sure you know, 12601, gives the Attorney General, not the federal court, the authority to determine whether a pattern or practice of unconstitutional policing exists. Okay? It's with the DOJ. The DOJ has formally now, and the city of Cleveland, determined that it does not by asking to get out of the consent decree. The consent decree is between the Department of Justice and the city of Cleveland. It's not with the court. The agreement is between the Department of Justice and the city of Cleveland. As you know, Mr. Chairman, to Judge Stewart, in past, when there's a contract entered into and both parties want out of it, a judge, 99.9% of the time, will go to the two parties and allow them to get out of the contract. I don't care if it's a contract to rent a car or do whatever, right? What gives the federal court the authority to keep us in the consent decree? I think this is a big question, and not the Department of Justice. If the city's saying let's get out of it, the Department of Justice is saying let's get out of it, the contract is between those two parties, what gives the court the authority to not accept the agreement?
Well, Councilman, as you know, I've been a,
I
was
know you-
a
that's why
retired,
I don't
I was a
wanna put
retired
you on the
state
spot.
court judge,
Okay,
so
yeah,
I would just
Chair,
say,
thank you.
I was just a retired state court judge, so I'm not as well versed in federal law as you would like me to be and I would like to be. And under no circumstances would I sit here and second guess the decision of the U.S. District Court. So that's kind of my response, unfortunately.
And I can appreciate that, but I think that's a question that is being asked of
I
us
can get
as
that.
well, right? I mean, we've got two signatories in a contract that want out of it. Why does the third party have that authority, right?
I understand
When both
that
parties, and you, I don't want to put you on a spot, but you've seen these type of cases in state courts and everything else. But, all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate you, Mr. Casey, sitting in so we could establish a quorum. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, you have me down?
Yes, I do. Councilman Jones, you're next.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I live in a neighborhood, predominantly African-American neighborhood, and a neighborhood that unfortunately over the years has, as we've heard some of the testimony here in terms of being in compliance and not in compliance. And living in the community that I've lived in, I've grown up all my life riding my tricycles, big wheels, motorcycles, my first car, and having the opportunity to drive a truck and take care of a family and still stay in the city of Cleveland, not leaving not one time. And over the years, I've seen the discrimination by the police department firsthand, personally, and family-wise. I've seen the discrimination here in the city. I've seen the discrimination as I went to other cities. When I was a kid, I saw the discrimination in Oklahoma with my family, being told that we shouldn't be able to eat at McDonald's. So I've seen a lot of things happen over the small space and time. A lot of things have improved to some great deal, but at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, when we talk about compliance and non-compliance, we have and I appreciate your leadership, Mr. Chairman, in saying, hey, what is it that we got to do to get in compliance? What is it next? And for us sitting here at the table, it would be like really, you know, giving us the, I mean, I need to sit down with you guys and kind of like get an orientation, because we saw the last, you're the new person now. We saw the last person get harassed until they decided, hey, this is not worth my reputation, so I'm going to resign. And it's a shame that a black man who was heading this up had to resign due to the fact of people picking and nitpicking at him. And I know how it feels to be an elected official, to be nitpicked and lied on. And so when you have to go through that being a black male in leadership, and you have to deal with that, how do you think, Mr. Chairman, black people felt to be picked on, their neighborhoods destroyed, and put in jail for having small substances and their entire families broken, and generations of destruction that has happened in the African American neighborhood, and then to sit at this table and say we're not in compliance? And while we're not in compliance, when we have at this space and time a black council president and a black mayor of the city of Cleveland, to me it doesn't make any sense. So while I sit here at the end of this table and go and been through what I've been through personally, my family has been through personally, some issues with the police department, and as I sit here at the table, and one of the reasons why I supported the commission was because I thought that there needed to be some balance, and I didn't like the way in which, when the situation was initially brought to the leadership here at that particular period of time, and how these people were disrespected in trying to bring a process and put it in place, then they finally took it to the people's ballot. I think that, Mr. Chairman, some other things, and as you see me sitting here talking about this subject matter of having the right appropriate staff, and having that staff have the right appropriate equipment, having them to be trained, we've learned over the space and time that the best police departments are the police departments that have great training. Those departments, no matter where they are, in this continental United States or in other countries, I've even went past other countries to see what their police departments are doing. And some of the best departments are those departments that have constant, consistent training. And so one of the things, Mr. Chairman, as you are the chairman of the Safety Committee, and as you sat here over the time since I've come back, I've always asked that question: why don't we have money in our budget for training? And why aren't we constantly training our staff? Because once you start training people how to deal with people who don't look like themselves, then you have a better policing situation. As I said here, Mr. Chairman, I talked about why it is that we don't have the people in our police department, our fire departments, our EMS departments reflect the same population value of our people. So for an example, if we're 30% minority, we should have 30% minority police officers. If we're 40% or 50%, the hiring here should be able to reflect that. And we've been talking about how bad the hiring has been since 1997. Now, I can sit here, and you've been here longer than I have, so you really know the history of when Carl Stokes was here and how he had to deal with the police issues. So, and how books have been written about it. So when I sit here and look at this group that's here right now, what will help me is to really fundamentally understand who's not working together and why they're not working together. So when you start talking about being in compliance, and then you have these big giant red marks, I'd like to know what it is that we're going to have to do to really get in compliance. And it's not just the administration, it is the men and women who are at the floor, because the administration sets the tone. So if the administration is not set up appropriately and correctly, then all of the ideals, their value systems, their beliefs, their policies are going to trickle right on down to the police force. So I do believe that being in compliance on all levels are important. And so making sure that the administrative process here is done right, I think that you're on track. I do agree with the judge who talks about the proposition of the court making that decision, and that decision shouldn't be taken out of the judge's hand. Now, who do we have currently over it now? Because I know that the previous judge was going to retire, so he hasn't retired yet. So he's still the judge. I hope they don't try to do anything to discriminate against him and try to pull him off as being judged somehow.
Lifetime appointment.
I know, but you never know how these folks are. So I've been here long enough to see some strange things, and certainly under this administration that's running the White House, I have never seen anything quite like it. So I'm going to tell you here, I would not be surprised in terms of moving people around to fit and suit whatever they want to do. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, can you talk a little bit about this, the compliance with the Commission, CDP, and CRB, why there's a problem with recruitment to expand the district policing committees? What is the process here? Why is there an issue of trying to get an inclusivity of community members and representatives? What's causing this to be a problem, and why are we so red here and haven't even reached any compliance? Because this is one of the things, Mr. Chairman, I talked about at the finance table with the new director of the Police Commission about having enough money in the budget to be able to operate appropriately. And apparently that has not been the case. I guess at that particular period, once she had just gotten in, now she took an assessment, now she needs resources. So if you could tell us why we're not in compliance, is it because we're not doing appropriate recruitment, or is it because we don't have a budget to be able to reach out to people and get them on?
To the chair, to the council person, I'm addressing the lack of cooperation between those entities that you mentioned. The consent decree calls for them to collaborate with one another, to plan and to strategize. That's something that's extraordinarily different from the way that they've been operating prior to the consent decree coming into being, and several years into the consent decree. Just recently, I think that those groups have recognized.
They're doing what?
I'm sorry?
You said just what?
Yeah, just recently that those groups have recognized that they have to work together, they have to strategize together, because we've continuously pointed out that they are not doing that, and that keeps them out of compliance. So I'm a bit optimistic. As the monitor suggested earlier, we are in the process, as we speak, of forming work groups that will bring those different entities together, lay out in front of them, this is what you have to do. These are the expectations. It's not something that we think would be nice. The consent decree requires it of you. And until you do that, you won't be in compliance.
If I may, through the chair, just add, it could be things as simple as in a large geographic district that is racially and ethnically diverse, that you move meetings around, that it invites people that are different ages, different skin color, different languages, to feel that they have equal invitation to participate, right? I worked in a different community many years ago where the neighborhood groups consistently met in the basement of the Catholic Church. Well, when my community was 40% non-Christian, that could be really off-putting. So looking at different strategies to get different people in meetings and feel welcome as participants really matters.
Okay, and let me just, and I'm reflective to this report here. So where you have, and I don't know if you have it in front of you, number 24, and it talked about, having the documents, efforts to reduce barriers of community participation. So you have a whole list of things here. But on the one side, in terms of where we don't have the expectations, but on the one side, it seems like our districts, each one of our districts are not organized. We don't have the community leaders in there. We don't have the ministers. We don't have the young people. We don't have we're not pulling that kind of information from each of the districts. So I know about the community sessions where, and I've even said this to Community Police Commission, you need to have the budget, Mr. Chairman, to engage with the neighborhood. If you don't have the budget to engage with the neighborhood, then you're not going to be able to get real, true public input on the various different stressing issues that have a profound impact on the African American communities. So I guess the question I would ask, Mr. Chairman, on the districts, what are we doing with trying to fill those slots?
To the chair, to the council person, and that's what I was referring to about the development of the work groups, where we point out the necessity of having those things happen, and then we sit down with all of those stakeholders and say, okay, how do we make this happen? because it's going to be different in different districts. We don't want to come in and lay something on the community and say, you must do this, you must do that. When we said, this is what has got to happen, let's work together to see that it happens, and you tell us how you're going to do it.
And to be clear, we can't, as the city side always buffers with us, we're not going to penalize the city if the results don't happen the way we all want them to. We have to evaluate the effort.
Right.
If you do all that you can do to try to have a diverse community, move it around, be sure you demonstrate there's collaboration. It's not just command or somebody on high dictating to the community what we're going to do, where we're going to be, where we're going to go. We see collaboration, we see efforts to make all these things happen, then you've done your job. And hopefully the results will pan out, but if they don't, you can't be penalized for that.
I see. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you. I have Nikki Hudson, and then we're going to ask for public comment, because I'm going to be out of here soon, because we've been here.
I'll stay here and run it if you want me to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, come ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Nikki.
Chair. I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have asked for regarding the breakdown of information by police district, and even more so if possible. I know my experience, as a block club leader prior to being on council, that I've,
Thank you.
seen and felt a very different police department since the implementation of the consent decree. But, I don't know if that is simply my experience or if that is how things are across the city. So I know that the purpose of the consent decree is, the key pillars are community engagement and building trust. And then it was mentioned that much of what, we're looking at now are administrative actions. But also how we deal with occasional hiccups that might happen. Are you familiar with the last year's case that was brought against Chairman Fahim and New Era Cleveland?
Yes, to the chair. Yes,
And-
somewhat familiar.
And so, I bring that up because, he was arrested on very serious charges. Then his partner was also arrested on very serious charges, as was his protege, Ramir Askew. And they were ultimately acquitted, rightfully so, in a court of law after a very lengthy criminal trial. But it was, brought up during the trial that, it was very likely, and this was caught on body cam, that this was a retaliatory because of a case that Antoine Tolbert, who also known as Chairman Fahim, had brought against against an officer. And so, that was just last year. And so I'm wondering, what is the monitor's position, or how is that reflected in this report? That is not an administrative issue. That is a very real situation of retaliation against a community leader for bringing a lawsuit against and winning a lawsuit against the Cleveland Division of Police.
Would anyone care to comment on that?
We're not going to comment about this specific case.
Okay.
The assessments that we do will highlight any gaps in the prescribed process or behavior. And the violations that you speak of in that case and in general can occur at many stages. And often we are assessing something of that nature as it makes its way through the final process of adjudication. So we might see it in the discipline review, we might see it in the OPS review, we might see it in the IA review. And we will always call out when the procedures are not being followed precisely. I don't want to speak specifically to that case. It's one, I just knew it by a different name. which is why I initially said I was not familiar with it.
Understand.
But we will be looking at the full adjudication of cases this year with discipline and OPS.
Okay, because I know, and through the chair, I know that they were attempting to have it heard by the CPC, but because of various issues with the CPC at the time, were unsuccessful in bringing it to them at all. So, I mean, I believe that, there's still, something still needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, Counselor, and that's the very reason why we're working diligently on these oversights. As part of, I think, part of the judge's reason why for denying the joint motion. If we go away, there's nothing that's in place to do that. As you see that we're already still here, and that couldn't get heard with CPC. And so that foundation is being built because you're right; those things will continue to fall through the cracks and not be addressed.
Thank you. And then I would also like to know, has the monitoring team conducted an analysis on the Cleveland Division of Police's use of flock cameras? In particular, the LPRs, the license plate reader systems.
We have not.
Because that system, as we're hearing across the country, is ripe for abuse. Many cities are currently suspending their flock contracts. However, Cleveland is being asked to renew it soon, I believe in June. And so, as council, how are we to determine, if it's being abused? We're expected to take the people's word for it. I'm not comfortable renewing a system just, based on somebody's word. I want to see hard data. And from what I understand, it's very simple to, circumvent the, these prescribed searches just so that you can, get the results you want without making it look like you're searching for something you're not supposed to. So just I would like to see an analysis of the city's use of this type of technology.
A lot of your concern, pardon me, through the chair, a lot of your concerns can be addressed by looking carefully at the policy and the contract with the vendor in any of those kinds of special equipments.
And through the chair, who sets the policy?
Policies would be set by the division. I'm not sure if that one needs to go through the Department of Public Safety, but probably would need to be reviewed by the CPC as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. House Jones, you have a question? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, to our monitoring team, good afternoon. A couple of questions. One, this was in regards to the survey. I'm trying to understand, because the survey from the monitors is supposed to be done biannually. And I know it has not been done for the entirety that I have been on council. Please explain clearly what happened and how the monitoring team plans to ensure that we are meeting the obligation to survey our community biannually.
Yes, happily, thank you. Through the chair, the survey was conducted in 2016 and then again in 2018. 2020 would have been the next year for us to do a survey. For obvious reasons, it made no sense. Community was primarily in lockdown. Police officers were ill and responding to the worldwide health situation. I'm vague on my years, I apologize. The next year was 2021, obviously, and things were not remarkably improved in terms of the health conditions of the world. And if my memory serves me correctly, that was also an election year. And we were asked by the mayor's office to postpone the survey. That brings us to 2022. In 2022, there was a change in monitors. I have no explanation for why it didn't happen in 2022 or 2023. I recall conversations about it, What I can assure you is that we share your both interest and concern. We have a concern because it's incumbent upon us, it's a requirement of the consent decree, as Melody said earlier, for the monitor to conduct this survey. So we began, as you know, Melody and I were appointed in August. We began late last year to develop a plan to do a community survey in this year. We've provided the city with a draft RFP, request for proposals, to share publicly because we don't have the internal capacity on our team to conduct a survey in the same fashion it was done in 2016 and 2018. The DOJ had no comments on our RFP draft. The city had a number of comments. That was shared with them in February, and we have been provided with some suggested dates from the city to discuss their input, and I believe that's being scheduled for later this month. I hope that we can come to some agreement that we use the same strategy that we used in 2016 and 2018 so that we can have, the different respondents, but same questions, same process to look at changes over time. And we're ready to release that RFP and work expeditiously to get this completed.
Council Lee?
Through the chair to the team. Okay, I will follow up on this. Yep, I'm going to say I'm going to follow up on this one.
Happy to speak to you.
Yep, because this is something I've consistently asked for, and I will follow up to actually see what this process will be. And in this case, when the monitoring team itself is not fulfilling its obligations, how do you recommend us to engage moving forward?
We fully intend to comply with all of our obligations, and the follow-up would be for you to tell us when we're not. And I'm happy to hear that.
Okay. I guess, through the chair to the team, the bias-free policing, I know we had the conversation about what was presented from the police accountability team. And again, that was part of my questioning is, analysis that was provided from the administration, it talked about the process itself wasn't biased, but the content, because when, again, I asked, like, the specific data of, like, what's the location, what's the time, like, you're going to get a certain result if you're only going to certain locations versus if you're not looking at it, comprehensively. And so how would you recommend the city of Cleveland to assess itself in a very comprehensive manner and not a selective manner versus process versus the actual implementation?
Oh, yeah. You want, well, go ahead. You can start.
I think the city needs to, and I'm not avoiding the question, through the chair, I'm not avoiding the question. In many ways, the city has to figure this out themselves, and we're happy to help them. What other police departments have done, have established a robust audit unit that looks in great detail at various levels of data, including down to the decision-making around the stop, right? And so unfortunately, there's not a universally accepted way to measure if there is bias in these stops. There's often questions about, is it the driving population? Is it the residential population? By what method should this be reviewed? And scholars continue to come up with different strategies to do this and hope that they do it well. And, offline I can share you different scholarly works that do some of this. In part, the city needs to look at crime, calls for service, strategic deployment of personnel, when I say strategic, I mean episodic, as in a task force or a traffic unit. Where is the enforcement happening, under what conditions, and what are the results? And then looking at the disparities, trying to identify the source of those disparities. It may be that disparities exist in a particular district because the only people who travel there or operate there are consistent with the people who are being stopped, right? There's often an explanation. So it's complex. It requires a number of different scientific data methods that are beyond the scope of me talking about, but I want the city to define how it needs to do it. It needs to be routine, it needs to be episodic, and it needs to be evidence-based. Do you want to add anything?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Through the chair to the team, you talked about staffing and how, and I just wanted to make clarification from observations of an understanding of that our police department needs to reevaluate our current staffing models to fit the needs of a 2026 policing and in the future. Is that correct? Is that what you
Yes.
indicated? Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought too. And again, I've questioned that too based on some of the like supervisor to layman type of things. Like, yep, it doesn't even, to me, like a lot of times make sense, even when you look at from an education model. I know education is very different than policing, but when you think about age and cognitive abilities, like some of these proportions do not fit today and our population size. So again, I do think this is something that the Cleveland City Council really should get into working with the administration to figure out how we are staffing. And I believe there was a request that I had made earlier of when we were going to do kind of like a workload analysis type of thing to actually get to us to do better staffing. And so I'll make sure to follow up in that regards. And then as I come to a close, there are just a couple of things that I would like to say based on the conversation. This conversation regarding the implementation of the Cleveland Community Police Commission, from my perspective, yes, there have been challenges, but working in this atmosphere is challenging, right? You cannot compare a group of people who did not know each other to come together to do Herculean work, and then there is basically the system itself, meaning city government. Most of the people who have worked in this building have been in opposition of it, who have intentionally done things to derail it, and it's only been 4 years. And I think we as a community need to get to a place where we can be honest to compare all the rings and things that have been going wrong for an entity that's only been in existence for 4 years compared to an institution that has been in existence for 160 years. There's no comparison. And I think we need to be very clear about that. And for those of us who have an obligation to ensure, because it's not just saying, oh, we're doing it right, or your data is doing it right. As I always say, I believe in the everyday people test. If the person in Huff don't feel like they can depend on Cleveland, we're not doing nothing. That's the litmus test. And there are far too many Clevelanders who cannot say assuredly that I believe that when I call, the right person is going to come, treat me with dignity, and I'll have a level of resolve that's fair, whatever that may be. That is our litmus test, and we are not there yet. And so that's kind of what I just really want to, and I'm going to continue to bring this up and put this on the record. We are not going to just dog the CPC when they have not had all the resources that they needed to be successful, period. And I'm going to continue to say that to my colleagues. And quite frankly, when we talk about the investments in this consent decree, all investments are not equal. Just because it's been in effect for 10 or 11 years, that does not mean it had a true partnership, even with Cleveland City Council, to ensure that we can have constitutional policing here in the city of Cleveland. We haven't been doing our accountability. And I can tell you, based on this, going into my 5th year. So I want to put this on the record, and I want community members who I am in alignment with, who believe that we can still be under a consent decree, because the city as a whole has not shown that we are thoroughly committed to this in a way that all of us can recognize it. So I want to make sure that people who are in alignment understand, regardless of what you hear from council members, there are council members that are standing in solidarity with you and know what our obligation is. And as long as we are here, we are going to work to ensure that the Cleveland Police Commission has what they need, and we'll do the best that we can as we are growing together to ensure that everybody who lives in the city, works in the city, plays in the city, and everything else, regardless of where you live, regardless of your socioeconomic status, know that when you call for help, that you can have trust. We are working there, and we're going to do what we can to ensure that it gets there.
And to the chair, may I just briefly say, Councilor, rest assured that when we talk about CPC challenges, they're not just CPC-made challenges. We recognize that, and we have relayed that to Pat, the police accountability team in the law department, and so we're very aware it comes from both sides. Just wanted to make sure you know.
I appreciate
aware.
that.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. And then finally, I will always just offer for processes, because I know we have community members that are here waiting to speak. I will always reiterate that when we have guests that come in, as best we can, we should get them to speak first before we start the work, because many people are everyday workers and they should not necessarily they might be doing it on a lunch break or something like that. And many times when we put them at the end, it disrupts their calendars. A lot of us have the obligation to be here forever, but regular people don't. And so we should prioritize that time and be mindful of our own comments to be in the 10 minutes from. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Jones, you have a final comment you want to make before I call? We have 5 speakers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is in part on 3 subject matters that was previously brought out by Stephanie House-Jones, which I think is critical. The first one was she talked about a report, and I said apparently we've only done 2 of these reports, and we're supposed to do a report every year, or how does that work?
No, we do 2 a year. The semi-annual reports are twice a year.
Twice a year. So is this the report that she talked about?
She's
She
talking about the
referred, and you
survey.
gave the analysis about the reasons why it wasn't produced.
That's a survey,
survey.
excuse me, that's a survey that the monitor was required to do every 2 years.
Okay, and so we haven't been doing it.
Correct.
And then we're talking about, just so I can have clarification, did we have an RFP initially when it was first done, the first 2 times that was done?
Yes.
All right, so we haven't been able to do that since 2016?
2018.
2018 was the last time we had the surveys. And then, so we're supposed to do it subsequently every year for 2 times exactly?
We are supposed to.
You're supposed to do that. Are we missing, Mr. Chairman, any other reports that the monitoring team was supposed to give us that we may not be aware of? So everything is on point with the exception of that? Okay. The next piece is talking about staffing. I'd opened that up earlier about the 4th District not having its staffing now. I know that there's some colleagues at the table, not at this table, but in Cleveland City Council that feels that we should have less police officers. So the next question, I'm not that one member who believes that. I believe we need to have more police officers. So I guess if you guys are doing this here, what is your assessment as it based, do we have enough police officers? Have you ever thought about that? Do we not have enough police officers? If we don't have enough police officers, are our police officers doing what they're supposed to do? What are the best practices based upon population and the police department? All these have been questions that we've kind of like funneled around this table in terms of trying to have an ideal and a concept. Right now, the crime is killing us in our neighborhood, and we don't even see police officers. So we're lucky if we see them. And then I have to request, Mr. Chairman, to have traffic enforcement. It's constantly as I can talk to my director, who's directing everything in our district, our commander police officer, and we're still not happy as a neighborhood. So I just want to kind of like figure out that whole piece and have you guys talked about it, and then what's your analysis, or are you still in the process of trying to make an analysis?
Okay. Can you
Thank you.
respond?
Through the chair. I'm not, I think it would be wrong for us to put ourselves in a position to comment today on whether you have the right number of officers or not. I think that's a conversation that you need to have with the chief of police, and it's a reflection of strategy, values, and goals. Best practices in 2026 include taking a very hard look at where officers are deployed, the work they're doing, and can that work be done differently, sometimes better, sometimes less expensively by professional staff. I was professional staff in a police department. I've never been a police officer. Are there positions where you can redeploy sworn personnel to the street and fill those positions with professional staff? That's a question of finances, philosophy, and goals. I think a staffing study would help put all those variables in a tool to help answer those questions, but I think it's done collaboratively with the chief of police.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, no further questions.
Thank you.
I yield you. I appreciate your
Thank you.
leadership on this.
I want to
issue.
thank the federal monitor and the judge and Mr. C for being here in your comments. And again, we want to continue our working relationship. We work closely together. I appreciate that. We want to be kept apprised of where there is success and where there are still roadblocks or non-compliance. We want to move the police department in the 21st century. I think we've taken a great deal of steps in that way. We're still not there. So again, I appreciate your comments, and I'm going to call upon, I have 3 speakers who asked to speak, public comment. They'll be given a maximum of 3 minutes each. First is Reverend Pamela Pinckney. Welcome to the table, Reverend.
Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to go back before the team, and I want to go to the legislation I missed this morning. I bring greetings in the name of Jesus Christ.
In the name of Jesus Christ.
For the ordinance 553-2026, the replacement of firefighter high-risk kits, please check the racial disparity in that area, because people are not getting services in the black, brown, multiracial community for the kits, and I want to make sure that it is stated on record the lack of care for the African American History Museum. I want to make sure nobody burns that building now. I'm very concerned about that. For ordinance number 555-2026, you have the language of cartel, narcotic, and laundering task force. In order to pass this ordinance, I ask that you would give the public a description of who the cartel gang is and how to get that under control. And I want to just go back to that. For this consent decree, Mayor Jackson has stated that the consent decree did not address criminal components of policing, and I still agree with that. And I heard Councilman Casey ask a question, and there is no truth to the answer of that. And I know that for a fact because the rapes of my children and me have never been addressed and prosecuted by the Cleveland police. And I've been talking about that for 25 years. I heard a lot of language here at this table, the constitutional protections. So I'm wondering, is the consent decree and this committee, the constitutional protection, is that the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution where slavery is never to be abolished? I need that to be addressed. The pro-slavery amendment, the Ghost Amendment. And to the chair, I'm a bit offended by the appointment by the mayor appointing white women to all of the leadership positions of our safety in the city. We have a white police chief, and we have now a white police monitor for this committee, when we have a predominantly black city, black, brown, and multiracial city with black women's bodies that are missing and dead that still have not been addressed. And I want this task force and this committee, this organization, to start putting people of color, women of color. And I'm a bit offended also by the mere chauvinism that we women of color are still receiving from the police department and in the leadership. My time is about to expire. and I am concerned that the racial disparity in the city of Cleveland is still a joke. I am concerned that people are still lacking fair and equal opportunities through the Cuyahoga County Resolution 2017-216, which is effective by this commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Rosie Palfay. Is that how I pronounce it? Okay. She is not here. We're going to move on. Mr. Darrell Houston. Mr. Darrell Houston. Mr. Houston, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Darrell Houston, and I have a car wash and detail shop in the Harvard area. I want to thank all of you today. I thought you guys had some great input. I thought the monitoring team had great input. I do want to say this. I hope everyone is paying attention now and more than ever before, because I think we have all identified to where the real issue is at. I think we're all woke now. And I think the real issues are with our leaders, okay, our mayor and our city council president, okay, and our chief of police, right? That's where it starts and stops at, okay? If they're not implementing the rules and they're not enforcing the rules, then we're gonna be hamsters on a treadmill, okay? It's time for accountability. And right now, there's no accountability with this particular administration. The last administration showed more interest than this administration. But this administration ran on SU 24. So it's kind of confusing now to see that we're at this table and we're still discussing old, retread information, and we're not identifying to the true facts. The true facts is that we have a leadership problem down in City Hall that refuses to aid this in the way that they're supposed to aid it. They took a constitutional oath to uphold the Constitution, and we're not receiving that. And as a taxpayer, I'm concerned about that, because we have a great opportunity right now to lead this country with what we do, okay? We're not leading right now. And I say we, as a community, is not leading. Our elected officials and our residents and the monitoring team, we are not doing what we're supposed to do as human beings, okay? And that's make it safe for everyone and hold everyone accountable to the Constitution. I believe that these police officers, I have not talked to one police officer, old or new, that doesn't understand what their responsibilities are. They understand that they do need to be trained. As I stated to you guys before, some of their training even stuck out just recently, where 2 new officers risked their lives right out here on Lake Erie to save a woman that was in mental stress. That's progress, right? But we all know, in order to have true progress, none of us can sit here right now and say that we are anywhere that we need to be when the magic word is 2,000 police officers to conduct and keep the community safe. If we got 1,300, that means that there are departments that doesn't have the manpower. So we cannot sit here and say that we're making progress when we don't have the manpower in all positions to make this work. To come out and say, as a black man, as a mayor, and as a black city councilman, to come out and say in Black History Month that we are in compliance enough to come off, and we can't get to an emergency call for help with less than, it takes 30 to 45 minutes. And that is a manpower situation.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sabrina Otis. Miss Sabrina Otis. He's not on the list. I have a Miss Palfy on the list. I have a Sabrina Otis and a Dale Snyder. That's who's on the list. They didn't sign in. Okay. Okay, go, Ms. Otis, wait a minute, I want to make sure you don't lose any of your time. Okay, Ms. Otis.
Hi, everybody. I want to speak about the number 5 in the consent regarding
Yes,
crisis
ma'am.
intervention. I'm just hoping that council is still going to be able to fund the police to have the social workers and staff. Recently, there was a man in distress downtown when the city had visitors that were doing a movie. And there was a man on the corner of Ontario and Euclid, and he was surrounded by officers. And when I reached out, I was told, may not be true or not, but I was told that the contract for crisis care was gone. And if it's gone, then who is actually doing the intervention for mental health? And we can't have this small stack of a few officers that are getting the training. Since it's mental health, I think all the officers should get a piece of the training so they at least know how to approach someone with the mental health. I've experienced an officer with no training, and she did it right. And she saved a young woman's life. So I know it can be done. I'm just hoping that the funding can be there for the officers to get that kind of training, especially since it's something that is being modeled that's occurring and it's really not. That is it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Otis.
Chairman, on that point,
Yes.
we did fund that
Yes, we
here.
did.
So the question is, why don't we have it in play?
And all police officers, all recruits are going through training as well. Okay. Dale Snyder. Okay, are you ready, sir? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. I just have a perspective as a community member in regards to the police and in regards to the consent decree. I've been to a couple meetings, and I just want to give my perspective. Like any relationship, my relationship personally with the police is layered. I made my bones in over-the-road driving, so I have a personal run-in with the police where I was on the side of the road in a remote area, and it was an off-duty cop that pulled over and helped me in my truck. I also grew up in the city of Cleveland. My uncle, who served in the military, I forgot which war he fought in, but nonetheless, he was beat half to death in Cleveland and left downtown. I was about 5 or 6, so I don't know all the details. I just remember that. And I have 6 uncles, and my uncles had to go find my father, and my other uncles had to find my uncle. So it's layered for me. I grew up playing football, Power 5 Dixon Raiders over there, 123rd and Superior. Before there was a finest, it was just a field. When I played Unity League, our team was undefeated in 86 and 87. I'm telling my age, but nonetheless, that was the police athletic league. Again, multi-layered. To bring it home, I am for the consent decree, but not to personally slant it against any officer. Of course, I respect and honor their service to the community. They're actually putting their life on the line. And I understand that. And as I've gotten older, that respect grows even more. As you get older and you obtain things, assets, you want the police to protect it so you don't have to protect it in a way where you be on the hook for something. Right. Nonetheless, to ignore the systemic issues that are within the police force, especially slanted against a demographic such as ours, and others as well, to ignore that will kind of go against the actual theory of policing, which is to service the community. So I think the consent decree in theory, just like the policing in theory, both are necessary, and if they can conjoin and not get in a personal boxing match, that they can work together for the betterment of the community. Last thing, I understand, I don't know the intricacies of the process of the grant process that comes out of that, but I will say this, there are community NPOs that have partnered with the CCPC, with the city of Cleveland, and are waiting on funds and resources to kind of absorb some of the situations that come from not having enough police staff.
Yeah.
That'll be all. Thank you.
I just you know, that has council has no control over that. That's
Okay.
CPC identifies the groups, and then they determine the amount of money they're going to get.
Okay.
Okay? Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Again, thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Mariah Crenshaw.
I'm gonna call you right back.
Then the last speaker, if she's here, will be Miss Palfy. Okay. Wait a minute there. I want to make sure you get your time. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you to the monitoring team for all the work that you've done, and for the new members, we welcome you. I'm a little disappointed because I did send emails to everyone in the safety committee. I'm not one to come to the table with complaints. I like to come up with solutions and resolutions to issues that are being faced. I did help the the Department of Justice to get the information that led to the current consent decree. I've worked very closely with the CPC prior to it becoming part of the charter. I've done extensive work throughout the state of Ohio dealing with police officer training. And so one of the issues that I wanted to present to you is that I see a lot of responsibility being handed off to the monitoring team and to the CPC, but I'm not seeing any real meaningful legislation pass through the safety committee and through the city to change the problems. If you really want to get out of the consent decree, then what needs to happen is you need to fix the issues, and you can do that through legislation. And what I did was I put together legislation. I've done this at the state level, and it's been accepted. You can look at the Ohio Revised and Administrative Codes and see the effects of the legislation that I've written and was accepted by the General Assembly and put into place concerning oversight when it comes to police officer training. You see 24 officers have been indicted out of the city of East Cleveland because of the data collection and me providing that to the federal government in terms of them not being compliant with training. I've done the same thing with Cleveland. I have a report that I put together. I've given that report to the monitoring team for review so that we can have further and deeper discussions. What needs to happen in this legislative body is there needs to be resolutions passed, there needs to be codified ordinances that hold police accountable, and you can start with doing public records. The biggest issue that the CPC has had to deal with is not receiving public records, not receiving information, because the information is everywhere. So the proposed legislation that I have sent to each of you, and you can look in your emails, it probably went to spam, so I'm not going to take it personally. Look for Chasing Justice. The proposed legislation is that you create a digitized ordinance passed to establish a centralized digital system for police personnel records in the city of Cleveland and promoting transparency, accountability, and interagency coordination. These are things that can be done through this legislative body. I gave Councilman Charles Slife a binder earlier that has another piece of legislation, proposed legislation. I'm hoping that he will make copies, because it's pretty extensive, of the report that I've already given to the monitoring team for review. I think that when we come to the table as residents and concerned citizens, we should not just come with a problem. We need to have some type of solutions to give to you so that you can institute them. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Crenshaw.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Yes.
I just want to say I appreciate the testimony of Mrs. Crenshaw, and she's always been actively engaged in the neighborhood. And I think I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Crenshaw. Your father was, and I wanted to bring it to his attention, is Stanley Tolliver. Is that correct? He is. That's right. So this is Stanley Tolliver's daughter. So, and you know how Stanley Tolliver is always engaged. So we're appreciative to have you here and your testimony.
Okay. Without the hat. Oh, you do? Okay, Ms. Palfy, and then that is it. It's been a long morning.
Yes, it is.
And afternoon. Tell me when you're ready.
Hi, I'm ready.
Okay.
Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So my name's Rosie Palfy. I'm a resident of Parma, and I work in Cleveland. I'm a veteran. I get my health care in Cleveland. So I used to be a member of the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee from 2015 until 2022. That was during the time when the Adams Board ran it. I represented veterans and the homeless community, and I had the pleasure of working with Mr. C on that committee. So my big concern is about community engagement. I can't understand what's happening. The consent decree created 3 public bodies: the district policing committees, the Cleveland Police Commission, and the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee, that's often called MRAC. And the thing is, that's what cities do as far as creating a separate committee for crisis intervention, but it puts it in a silo. So I can't understand why these 3 entities aren't working together for surveying. I also want to point out that, to the best of my knowledge, MRAC isn't codified anywhere. So even though the city has praised the committee, wants it to continue, there's nothing in writing that says it will continue after the decree. The other thing I want to point out is the committee is meeting by Zoom every other month for 1 hour at 9 in the morning on Fridays. So the residents don't know about it. And so that's one of my concerns. The city has done a wonderful job with crisis intervention. That data shows that. But residents are people, not data. And so my concern is that to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they're having, community events. And, they didn't have a budget when I was on the committee. The other thing I want to point out is paragraph 137 of the consent decree, crisis intervention coordinator. It says that they'll designate an officer at the rank of captain or above to act as the coordinator. So there is a wonderful lieutenant who is the acting captain, Lieutenant Mullen. He's extremely passionate about crisis intervention. He's been doing it a few years. And I've requested several times, or suggested, that why doesn't the DOJ and the city submit a joint motion to the court to amend that paragraph and allow a lieutenant or above to serve in that capacity? So that's an example of something that the city has not been in compliance with for years. And it might not sound like a big deal, but there's that. And so I just think it would be a great idea if the city would consider having MRAC involved with this wonderful partnership with Kent State. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments and all the public comment. To Ms. Cole, to Judge, and to Mr. C, thank you for your comments and your testimony today at the table. Again, we're here to work with you, work closely with you. We want to identify areas of noncompliance, stress upon the administration to rectify those areas as soon as possible so we can move on. So we can have a pleasant divorce at some time in the near future, okay? Okay, I know. Amicable. There we go. There's the judge had to put that in there. Amicable. That's all right. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. Committee stands adjourned. Thank you.